This conference will now be recorded.
So we'll call to order September 28th meeting of the Monterey Select Board at 5 p.m. Justin Maycook here, President Town Hall.
Susan Cooper, President Town Hall.
We don't have Scott at the moment, but he may arrive shortly. So the first item of old business, we'll get started and see if Scott comes, but the first item is the special town meeting warrant. A couple questions other than, well, there's more than not. So I think one thing is I asked Donna reviewed it.
Okay, this is the current version, correct?
Yes, so Donna more or less said everything is good. If you'll notice, there's a new Article 4, which we have not discussed before, but it is, are you familiar with the truck issue?
No, somehow.
So, in May, we approved, I think it was $160,000 of a loan to purchase an outfit, F-550 truck.
Okay.
And I've since learned that that particular Ford vehicle is hard to purchase. And the Director of Operations and the Town Administrator recommended that we make the wording more flexible to purchase essentially the same vehicle, but not necessarily a Ford F-550.
Right.
We do have to go back to town meeting because town meeting had voted
For a 550.
a very specific truck.
Exactly.
Donna said that's the appropriate wording.
Okay.
The other, I'll just read her response since we're waiting for
Right.
Scott. Other than that, the three articles we've discussed before and the Finance Committee voted last night and approved all of them.
Okay, great.
I tried to get them to pre-approve the Parks one, just in case you did add it, for the ball field, but they wouldn't do it.
Okay.
Just so you know.
Do we yet have an actual estimate? For the Parks?
No, I just finally got in touch with the former public works guy from Barrington, he sent me some names of people that he used. It was just today that I got that, so.
Okey-doke.
So this is what Donna.
I did put it in your packet, but I think it's attached to the warrant, if you're looking for.
Oh, yeah, here it is. So the way we've worded it is very typical for how we've done it in Monterey, as far as I'm aware. So vote to transfer from free cash the sum of, or any other sum to pay for. Donna said something for you to consider. The article is only put town voters on notice of the subject matter to be addressed at town meeting and need not be verbatim what the motion will be. I recommend flexibility in the wording of warrant articles to prevent a situation where the moderator calls a motion should be beyond the four corners of the article and rules it out of order. For that reason, I recommend that the article read to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds rather than specifying free cash. The motion on town meeting floor would still have to specify that the funding is from free cash. I do prefer that we mention where it's coming from, free cash, in this case. Both because I think it's more transparent and direct, straightforward, and also because I'm aware that the moderator has previously entertained motions to take from free cash, motion, change it to stabilization or vice versa.
It's worked before, so there's no reason to assume it won't work now.
Yeah, I did ask the moderator and it sounds like he, in the past, he has not ruled motions like that outside of this scope. I think we've discussed and talked about the town meeting warrant briefly before that, moderators are just different, and some moderators might not allow that, but.
But this one's working, so let's not fix it. One tiny little thing, free cash is capitalized in Article 1 and 2, but not 3. Can we make them consistent?
And then the other item which we discussed, and I just wanna verify, is if we're holding it in the firehouse's pavilion.
I think that, It's gonna be chilly, but I still think it's better, like, I can't speak for you, but, my husband is now dealing with several cases of COVID in his classes. Every group I know has been having issues. I think there will be people who won't come if it's indoors, and that would be better off pulling it outdoors. We don't wanna have a special town meeting that ends up being a spreading event, like, that would be a bummer. So I think it's a little safer to do it outside, and I'd be in favor of that, but I'm entertaining other options.
It has been typical of the last couple of years to hold it in the pavilion.
Well,
It is on,
previous to COVID anyway.
well, previous to COVID, it was usually in the fire station.
Oh, in the pavilion, you're right, I thought you said in the. Sorry.
So,
Great.
but, yeah, I mean, it's on one side, you risk it being a cold day, it is at 1:30, which should be about as warm as it will get. So we just need to make that call, I'm fine with it being.
I think it's a short, I don't really see these being particularly contentious, I mean, maybe I'm wrong and there'll be a big fight over changing the wording of the fire truck or whatever, but, or, it's not even a fire truck, is it? No,
The F5.
it's an F5. I don't see it being likely to be contentious, so if it doesn't take us hours, even if it's outside, it's gonna be okay.
Okay, so why don't we go with pavilion, so, I don't know if we've typically worded that, Melissa, but something like to meet in the pavilion behind the firehouse or something.
Yeah.
And we'll keep the 1:30 o'clock in the afternoon,
Saturday afternoon.
and then the free cash we're capitalizing.
Yeah.
But other than that,
Okay.
it would be good to have, we'll probably wait for Scott to
Finalize.
finalize this,
Okay.
which brings up the lack of controversial issues.
Uh-oh.
Do we want Donna to be present in person? Do we want her to be on the phone? Do we feel like her presence, I revisited our terms of engagement with her, and I thought it might have included coming to town meetings, I don't think that it does.
I thought she did say for annual town meeting for sure, I don't know where a special town meeting would fall though.
I didn't, at least in the offer letter, I didn't see anything about ever not charging it the hourly rate. So the point being, if we call her in, and the meeting's a half hour or an hour, it's an hour, whatever it may be. If we request her to be there in person, I'm sure that she'd be obliged or send someone else from the firm.
I mean, I feel like, given what's on the warrant, I feel like the most we would need would be able to consult with her by phone, but
Yeah.
it's not, this is in fact my first rodeo, so.
I don't think
I will
that,
stand by your thoughts. on
yeah,
this.
I don't think that she needs to come in person. I think if there was a bylaw change or something like that, it's a few money articles.
And they're all sort of, not standard, but standard in the sense of,
Scott,
not that unusual for a town to have, or even our town to have. We were just
I hope you
discussing,
had started.
we did,
Thank
we were just
Don't
discussing
ever wait for me.
whether, we needed to have town council physically present by phone or not present at
Or-
the special town meeting.
I always thought that we had town council there all the time, didn't we?
When town council was local, we did.
Well, Jeremia wasn't local. Where's our new town council?
Wells. So, and I think the point being, at least my sense was that these issues are fairly non-controversial, and the most we would need is available by phone. But I did wanna run that, see if we wanted her to be there. It would just be the travel time and the time of the meeting. If we call her in on the phone, it will just be the time of the meeting that we're billed for.
Phone.
Okay,
Why
we're,
drive if you
that's a
don't-
consensus, we'll have counseling by phone.
And we also were, firehouse or pavilion, I was putting forth that since there have been a bunch of cases of COVID, the pavilion, I think, is a better choice. There'll be less potential spread, more people will feel comfortable, and it's gonna be a short meeting, so I don't think anyone's gonna freeze to death at 1:30 in the afternoon. That was my thought.
Yeah, I don't know if it takes, does it really matter?
Well, we just have to make the decision, so I think Susan and I
That's
were,
what I'm saying. I mean,
Susan and I were on the pavilion set,
yeah.
so we'll put it in the
We
pavilion.
just didn't wanna
Yeah.
decide without you since you're here
Well,
And-
now. Okay,
you should decide without me,
okay,
because if I'm not here, I'm not
so
here.
noted.
And the
Okay.
last thing, just to update you, the only new article you'll see on here, Scott, is Article 4. We voted at annual town meeting to purchase a 550 truck, and Jim, the director of operations, is saying that it's hard to purchase a Ford, and that he can probably much more easily purchase a similar vehicle of another model. We have
Same price.
So it's not changing the money at all, it's just changing the wording, because that wording at annual town meeting was very specific.
Yeah, they usually are, and I'm not certain if that needs to stay.
That's
That
kind
point
of,
specific where you're tied into that manufacturer. I would say we're
or
looking,
model, or anything.
right, we're looking for a vehicle of this price.
Yeah.
That fits our needs.
Exactly,
It's an open.
of this price or less.
Assume that that's the truck that came along.
Yeah.
So I'm good with trying to lighten the load on that.
So,
Okay.
with those changes, it being in the pavilion rather than in the firehouse, the capitalization on Article 3 of free cash. And that's the only
That's it,
changes,
Yeah, just have to fill in the date of September 8th.
yes.
Do we wanna add that the select board supports approving this article as well?
Yeah, let's go article by article, so does the select board, support Article,
I support them all.
I
Scott
do too.
supports them all?
I support them all,
Um,
including Article 4.
yeah, the only article, I don't necessarily support Article 2, just because I was on the board when we hired Jeremiah, and I think if he had said what it was going to cost, that I might not have voted, to hire him, because Hume was likely going to appeal the case anyways.
Okay.
But we could write, the select board supports approving this article 2-1.
We could, although.
And we
even
can
if
always
I
strike
mean,
it at the meeting, if that letter that she drafted today, he
bears
responds to
fruit,
prior to, yeah.
But, I mean, here's the thing, even if he reduces it, we still have to pay him, and we still don't, you're saying we just use the 2,500 and that's it?
It's tricky because the high end of his estimate included more than the 2,500. But we also were expecting more, at least I was under the impression we were going to be billed for more before the end of last fiscal year.
Mhm.
Although we weren't very explicit with him on that. But I mean, there was a number of things, as you'll see in Donna's letter, we were offered a $30 rate for staff.
I saw that.
Yeah.
But even if he reduces it, so let's assume he reduces it, if he doesn't reduce it to, what would he have to reduce it to for us to fit it within the current Google budget, which is $2,500, right? We only have $2,500 left.
Yes.
Right, and that would wipe us out for the rest of the year, and including, we wouldn't even have the money for the deductible for the suit that we were served with today. So,
Well, so one question about the deductible, Melissa, I know we talked about it on Monday.
Yeah, she didn't answer me yet.
We don't know if we pay the deductible soon or towards the conclusion
right,
of a suit.
true,
Um,
but so I'm just trying to, I get that we're not sure of the amount, and I'm totally with
Yeah.
reducing the amount. I just don't wanna see us zeroed out at this point in the year for litigation. I mean, I'm assuming we're gonna owe him something, and I'm concerned that if we don't support that, what do we do? What would be the plan? If we didn't have this on there, or if it didn't get passed, what would we do?
so Donna's letter to Green and Hafer worked well enough that as far as I know, we never heard back.
Right.
We just said, that's the money we have allotted. It was a different
Mm-hmm.
situation, but like I said, I feel like if we knew when we hired Jeremiah to take that on, what it was going to cost,
You want to know?
I don't know that I would have voted to hire him, and my vote to hire him was necessary. So
But
I'm
we
kinda
did-
displeased.
the thing
I
is,
don't know.
Yeah, I don't blame you for being displeased, but you did hire him. And once you contract with someone, all I'm saying is, I'm hoping the bill gets reduced. And I could see that if that does happen, we could just say the article is no longer necessary. But I wanna imagine the scenario where what we get back from him is less than the current estimate, but still more than we have. What would you envision doing? If we,
Well, we'd have to
didn't-
raise the money to fight the bill.
um,
But I really am, I'm opposed to the town, being quoted at something and then being charged more than double without, an update.
right,
That's,
I don't
But by appropriating the funds, doesn't insinuate that we're gonna pay that amount.
exactly.
no, it
That-
doesn't.
Or, so your point is valid, that, we're fighting this, but we also have to be smart enough to know that if we lose it, we need the money between now and annual.
And I hate to call a special town meeting for that.
Oh, no, you can't do another one.
Well,
Yeah, I kinda like what you had said, 2-1.
Okay,
so we'll put,
Because we still have time before the actual meeting, that if he responds with a lower bill.
Okay.
Then everything is better, then we can adopt the dollar value down.
Yeah.
And certainly.
that would be great.
Well,
So-
I'm hoping for it.
so and I think all the finance committee votes were 3-0. So why don't we just do, on everything, the finance committee supports approving this article 3-0. And then for Article 2, the select board supports approving this article 2-1. And then we'll,
that may just
Just
open up,
changes.
for conversation at the meeting, to where they're gonna ask what was the sanction.
yeah, and hopefully we're further along, with Jeremiah at
Yeah.
that
And
point.
have a little more
I
information.
mean, you're absolutely right in saying what you're saying, and we're right in saying what we're saying, so I think it's a good point to be made both ways.
What about Article 4? Do we wanna have a similar thing there or no?
Yeah, we should.
Okay.
The only reason the finance committee usually just votes on money articles.
Okay.
And although it is tangentially a money article, it's really about, it's an operational question about what kind of truck can be purchased.
Well, I support it.
Yeah, I support Article 4.
So, the select board supports approving this article 3-0.
Okay, and then on the warrant as a whole, I would move that we approve this warrant for calling a special town meeting.
Second.
And is there any further discussion or comment on the warrant? All right, we'll call a vote. Susan?
Yep.
Scott?
Yes.
And Justin, yes. And we'll get 7 copies to sign.
One for your mother.
And that takes care of old business 1. Old business 2 is the anti-discrimination and harassment policy. So I made some edits and gave them to Sophia today. I think I laid out a more clear process for what happens. Basically, the way I laid it out, the human resources director or someone else if necessary does the investigation, sends it to the select board. They're required to do it within 2 weeks of receiving the complaint. Then the select board at that point takes that report and all relevant information and meets with, because we're required to meet with anyone who might be subject to discipline. And we decide whether or not the town is going to take disciplinary action. I think it just laid it out a little bit more clearly than it was laid out.
And I just for clarification, when we had that meeting, it would be with all parties?
No.
Or just the person, if we're taking an action?
It's just with, if you're discussing the discipline or charges or complaints against an employee, it's just with them.
So if HR,
Plaintiff.
right, if HR finds that there was no wrongdoing or that there's no reason for any punitive action, then what happens? this ever comes
So
to us?
So the way that I laid it out, which I think is the right way to do it, is basically the select board's never beholden to any recommendations, right? And that's just how it is. The report could come back and say, this person did violate the policy egregiously and they should be terminated, or it could come back and say, this person didn't violate the policy at all and there should be no disciplinary action. We can take all the information and do what we want.
Right.
And that's just the fact, that's how it is.
Okay.
Whether or not,
But no, I
that's just how it is.
So
So the way that I have it written out is the report is sent to the select board. And then the select board at that point in time chooses if it wants to have any meetings with any alleged,
with anyone.
with anyone. And, I mean, that's how it is.
And then would that have to be an executive session?
We would offer an executive session, and this is why I'm gonna run it by Donna, but we
Right.
have to run it by Sophia first, because she wants to have more input, she wants to talk about it with us at the next meeting. I got a response from her that said, like, she wants to talk about it.
And I know she was concerned, because I had raised the question of there not being any timeline in there. And she raised a concern that, there could be problems with timelines, so I'm sure, she may have talked to her about that as well.
I did not really, but you guys will all get a copy of my
Okay,
edits,
excellent,
and we'll have to discuss it with Sophia.
and then we'll.
But I just didn't like how I felt like it left it too much up to interpretation
Yep.
as to what was going on. So this is the warrant, so that would take care of two, we're really gonna discuss it with Sophia when she comes in
Okay.
next week, but we'll sign these copies of the warrant. Oh no, it's gotta be 2 pages.
Both ways.
Oh, did your signature, yeah, well,
What?
I can fix that if you want.
I mean, either way, we have to have Julio's signature, right?
I don't think, you really think you can get that on record without making it
I don't know.
size 6
I
fonts or
could if
something?
you really wanted to.
It doesn't
Doesn't
matter
bother
to me.
me.
Poor Scott.
You're doing a good job developing that signature, Dan.
Yeah.
Why do we have 3? Or however-
7.
7, okay, you told me before, it's for each posting site, never mind.
Yes, and I keep a couple like real copies here and one to the printer and. Better to have too many than not enough.
Point taken.
This is the first warrant in years with 3 signatures on it. Since I've been on the board. It looks like that's 2 though.
I know. We need longer paper. Okay,
We'll finish
that's
that.
done. What's next?
I didn't give you copies of 3 because I've given them to you each week, so I was trying to save a couple trees.
I don't blame you. I think I finally took it off my dock last week. It's fine, I'll find it, don't worry. I understood from Donna that she's out of town for the next 2 weeks, is that
Yes.
also your understanding?
Yeah, she's out of town until October 10th. We have
Okay.
a backup, Alex Rubin,
Okay.
who has been assigned in the interim. If we have any questions. I think she said she may be checking email, she's just not the person to go to with
That's fair.
immediate
My request.
questions. So, item 3 is the town administrator job description contract and corresponding draft on it. So Melissa and I agreed to send a memo out to departments to clarify the role of the town administrator. And then we agreed to review the job description of the town administrator so that the select board is on the same page of what the role of the town administrator is before we inform everyone what the role of the town administrator is. And then Melissa raised to me that in her contract with the town, any changes to the job description need to be agreed upon by both parties, which includes the town administrator and the select board. So it's kind of a large task because it all needs to be agreed upon by both parties or none of it can happen. Which is a job description and a contract. The memo, could happen afterwards, and could happen before, but I thought it'd be better to clarify.
When is the contract up?
The contract is not up.
Year and a half, approximately.
Why are we doing contractual work then? If she's already under contract for the time being?
Because when we discussed changing the job description, Melissa mentioned that in the contract requires that changes to the job description be agreed upon by both parties, the town and the town administrator. So when I suggested some changes to the job description, Melissa suggested some changes to the contract.
To your knowledge, has Donna reviewed the contract?
No, I don't think Donna, at least she's never reviewed it for me.
And I figured you would have told us if you had asked her that, but trust but verify. I told Melissa, and I stand by this, I am not an expert in contracts. I would not feel comfortable addressing changes to the contract without our current town council reviewing the contract. Because I do not trust that I would find relevant issues. I don't have any experience and she has a lot. That's why we pay her.
And
Yeah, I'm with you on 100% on that.
so the general gist of it is I made some small changes to the job description, like grammatical ones, and a few significant ones in the A through S list of duties.
The version that I have, I believe, unless it's in email, is a PDF one that doesn't have your. That would be
You may
great.
wanna print off 2.
And then
I'll print off both of them.
I had suggested changing the human resources administration function, given the human resources director. And
Which makes a lot of sense to me, and I support that as well. Oh, wait, I do have one. Of course I find it.
Well, I'll do it.
Sorry. So, yeah.
and a few other changes.
Just a second, where are you getting these things from?
The town administrator job description, I think. Correct?
Yes,
I'll print you up a copy, so
Okay.
unless you want me to email it, are you on there? You
Yeah,
can
I'm
see
on
it in
here,
email? Okay,
I'm
I
just
will
curious if they were in email form.
So I
don't
you know,
have
as
it.
I've said before, I think it's really mission critical that now that we have HR finally, HR be absolutely independent and answer to no one but the select board. That there can neither be the reality nor the appearance of any influence on HR's function. Given our history, I think it's super important. Would you concur?
yeah, I think the way we had it, one of my proposed changes was instead of the TA supervising the town's human resource administration, The TA coordinates with the Human Resources Director for the maintenance and security of personnel files. And
Were you looking at under essential functions?
yeah, what is that?
My computer like this.
J,
I just had to send, under
It was
J.
old
TA
J.
right, blue, alright.
oh, and then the TA administrators and supervisors either directly or through a person. So I don't know the best way to go about this, because it sounds like we want council to review the contract. We have the actual changes or recommended changes to the job description, we have the recommended changes to the contract, including extending it through February of 2024, and including changing 35 agreed upon office hours.
Is that in the
Just
are you talking
clarifying.
the contract or the town, or the,
What's that?
It's just clarifying
is the 35 agreed upon in the contract or in the
Yes.
job description?
contract.
Yes, so this was something that came up before Scott was on the board, but Melissa and Sophia and I discussed if Melissa's put in 35 hours before Friday and took out Friday as a vacation time, can she take it off without vacation, because she's already done her 35 hours for the week? And my point of view is that it says no less than 35 agreed upon office hours per week is required by the contract. So I felt that if Melissa came earlier, stayed late on other days to accomplish the essential functions of the job, she hadn't
All of the office hours.
maintained the agreed upon 35 office hours, and so that she was more than welcome to take the Friday off, but it would be vacation time and not comp time.
It's not necessarily always a set Friday, it could be, you know, coming in late on another day or something, or, and it's not, and I think I cleared it up in there saying that it had to be done within a certain, like, it couldn't just be banked,
Yeah.
you know?
It just, how you put it is Miss No may use comp time for any hours worked beyond the agreed upon 35 as per the employee handbook.
Which typically doesn't really apply to salaried supervisor employees, I don't think.
Well, that was my sense, which is that this is a contract with a salaried, what did you call it?
A salaried position with
Yeah,
supervisory
a salaried position.
roles.
So my sense was that what the town gets out of it is the town administrator fulfills the essential functions of the job, and in this case, for whatever reason, I mean, actually I know the reason, but the town was getting 35 agreed upon office hours. Because we all know why office hours are good, availability to the public, availability to departments. And that every employee has vacation and is entitled to use vacation. But that other than vacation or sick time, those office hours need to be covered. So it can't be, you know, if a salary position, you know, the person works late on a Monday, take Friday off.
And I think part of the difficulty I always have with these policies, and I actually, talked to a couple of town administrators in other towns, as well as the town manager in Barrington, is that, you know, we end up making policies, I still, I'm gonna call them the shoe bomb scenario, right? Sometimes policies are drafted to prevent bad action and then become restrictive even of people who are reasonable. But, so it's always tricky to draft a policy that isn't so restrictive that it causes problems for people who are legitimate, right? But I think that comp time is something that's for a salaried worker, having, you know, been that person and worked a lot more than the 35 hours, say. I think it's not unreasonable to occasionally take comp time, but I don't think it can be a regular thing. So I don't know how to craft a policy, like I think your office hours thing is one way to approach it. And but I think it's tricky. I don't know how you do it, and I think in talking to the other town administrators where this was part of a consideration, they've handled it by having available comp time, but not being abusive about taking it. But I don't know how you craft a policy that does that. Like, you know, asking someone who's put in a 60-hour week for whatever reason not to take comp time, I mean, I guess you're right, they could take it as vacation time. But at some point, the number of hours adds up high enough that you feel like it's not unreasonable that they maybe not have office hours, but to do it every week, I think would be inappropriate. So I'm not sure, I totally respect what you're after, I just recognize the difficulty in crafting a policy that's like fair and equitable and protects the town and doesn't act, you know, overburden employees, like, you know, I don't know how you do it.
So how do we wanna proceed with this? The job description, the contract, and I think the memo kind of follows depending on how the job description and contract negotiations or process goes, because we could decide the job description is that X or Y, and the memo to employees will partially be based on that.
What, I didn't, other than the HR thing, what changes were being suggested that would affect the memo?
I don't, let me look back.
Cause that was the only one I noted on the memo, but you may have had others.
Yeah, I'm not familiar, I had just always thought that we should clarify between the town and the town administrator, the job description.
Oh,
First.
I completely agree with you that it would be good to clarify it, I just don't know that the memo has to be linked to it, because the only thing that's in there that struck me that
The hour.
needed to change, that's not in the memo, the memo is about the TA's role in supervising various departments.
That's
but
what I'm
right.
agree with you, that the only difference is our thing with the TA as far as those hours.
Well, other than that, the current job description says the TA supervises the town's human resource administration.
Well, that's something that we gotta think about and make a change or not.
Yeah.
I was just sticking with the hours thing. You asked if there was other points that were gonna hold up the memo going
Yeah.
out, and it doesn't seem like there
The
are.
memo- yeah, the
Other
memo-
than that, the next
It's
statement.
the
that you just
HR
had.
thing, yeah, the HR thing is the only thing,
Right.
but if we took HR off the list of people that are answering to her, we
Mhm.
could always amend it and send a separate memo just to HR, but as long as if we wanted the memo to go out sooner, I think it wouldn't be inappropriate to just remove HR from the chain and make it clear, I think I had given you, changes that make it clear that, pardon?
I can print it off for everybody.
Yeah.
Well, so this paragraph would change drastically depending on how we end up with the job description. Effective immediately, all day-to-day operational items, including human resources concerns, should be reported directly to the town administrator.
Right, and I did change it.
You're saying you should change that?
Well, I'm saying, if they're supposed to go to the human resources director,
Well, all day-to-day operations wouldn't go to the human resources, right?
but would human resource concerns go to the town administrator or the human resources?
To HR.
To HR. So
That's not
human
how the memo
resources
has it.
concerns would not be in there. Well, I don't know, what is, human resource concerns, would that concern, like, I need more labor? No, human resource concerns would go to HR. Yep, so that would have to be.
Maybe you should change to benefit concerns, cause that, I think, is more what was,
Okay,
because Sophia doesn't handle benefits,
okay,
payroll and benefit concerns.
And then the other thing that we need to clarify is that the select board appoints the town administrator, and anyone under that appointment chain anyone's appointed by the select board, the town administrator is tasked with supervising, but
Is this memo or job description?
memo of all appointed, right? Because elected, the
Elect- we have no
the elected
control. Yeah,
tree
yeah.
warden doesn't report to the select board or the town administrator, or
Yep.
they just report to the voter. So, how do we wanna proceed? I don't wanna get too hung up on this if we need to have or we wanna have council review it anyways. I don't know where to begin with council. Are we going to have her look at the contract as it is, look at the contract as it's proposed?
Both.
Both.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
the original and
That's the
the
point,
proposed
right?
changes.
Look at
and-
this, make recommendations and fit our proposals into it.
Yeah.
Draft up something that's.
That would work.
Yeah.
I mean, changing I'm okay with most of it, I think I looked over these at one point, and, the only question I had was this one about, but is not required. The TA attends regular meetings, but is not required, and attends all town meetings.
So the way I have it written is, except when the TA is on vacation time or sick time. I don't know, the track changes came out weird.
Yeah, it really did. Okay,
Just because I didn't think that, although the town
No, that makes
administrator is
sense.
allowed to attend any meeting
Right.
that they want.
we could, put
They're not
may
required.
attend it, right, yeah, okay.
So I
The
will,
track
but
changes.
do you think, I should probably have Donna review this, just because of her town, which means that it could be, she's not gonna be back till October 10th, but we'll come back to it at that point.
Okay. So the main change to the contract would concern the comp time issue.
The comp time and a possible extension.
Right.
Of,
The contract.
she definitely needs to look at it.
Yeah.
And before anybody gets extensions,
Yeah.
you gotta keep, everything changes in the law,
Yeah.
2 years, something like that.
So we will table that until Don's had a chance to look at that. The next item is office coverage during vacation or make-up time after vacation. So, and it's come up in a few different ways, but I think the question is essentially, in each department, there's often office hours. And sometimes there's not office hours, but someone's in the office doing work. And when the person who would be holding office hours is on vacation or sick time, is there someone covering for them, or are they making up those hours after they come back from vacation or sick time?
It seems like there's two separate issues, right? To me, that's two separate issues. One is if there's work that needs to be done, right, and a person is out, whether it's vacation or for any other reason, how does the work get done? Does it just get delayed till they return? Does someone else cover those jobs while they're absent? Or does the person make up that work when they return? I'm inclined to say that, like, typically when you take vacation, when I take a vacation, typically you don't work double hours when you return to recover from the vacation. That can be an anti-vacation, I don't know. So I think vacation is vacation and you don't just make up the hours.
Well, one thing that Sophia and I talked about was in some instances, if we were to have someone, and I mean it is just so particular to each department,
I agree.
but if we were to have someone cover, some office hours, they may not be able to fulfill all of the functions of the person who's normally holding them, because maybe they're an assistant. So there may be things that just do need to get delayed, depending on what it is.
Which is fair, but then they get dealt with when the person comes back, but they don't necessarily work double hours the next week.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends, because maybe they do need to work depending on what it is, more hours to make up for
That's what
whatever it
happens.
may be.
The onus is on that employee to get that work done.
And I think if they're gonna go over hours, they're gonna need to get permission, not only for the vacation, but to make up the hours.
I think they need to do it on their own time then. I mean, do it as much as you can, but, I mean, if I walk away from something and I come back 2 weeks later, I don't expect to still stay walked away from it. So to me, to pick up those pieces and get that job done. And do the rest of the job that you're back at work for.
But
You're
that
gonna
would
make
be,
that up. I don't think that's like, all of a sudden they're paying them extra because they took vacation and left work behind that couldn't be filled. And all of a sudden they come back and, oh, well, I need extra hours to do this. It's the job.
right?
You would have done it had you been here. Now you leave, which is fine, everybody's entitled to leaving, but you have to understand that when you leave, you come back, you still got a pile of papers in your desk. Those are your papers that need to get rectified and sent out and finished. If you've got somebody that's capable of handling it during the time you're there, and they are part of the budget process for assistant clerk, for instance, assistant building inspector, if there was somebody that's building, then that's part of their budget. And those people try to do as much of that work as possible, and the person who actually goes away feels like, yeah, I can walk away, knowing that when I come back, I don't have to make this up. But I think that's kind of how it is in the real world, is that you walk away from something, it's still yours when you come back to it.
And it's tricky, because if we actually have someone cover the office, but they can't the functions of the job, then we've paid someone who wasn't able to get the work necessarily done. I mean, it just varies office by office.
I guess it would also depend on the, not like, if if you can do 80% of the job, then when the person comes back, there's only 20%.
Yeah.
If you can do 5% of the job, why are we paying you at all?
Correct. I mean, I think it had worked. It had always seemed like it had been working in past years. Goes away, somebody fills in as best they can, they come back, maybe the two of them, because it's still in their budget
Right.
to have that person help. I mean, to me, the clerk's office is a perfect example, only because it is to work together, do have an assistant. So that's the only reason I'm using the clerk as
And
an
I know
office.
that we do have an assistant building inspector that when
Well, it's
Don
budgeted
can't be
for.
here, it's budgeted for, and when Don can't be here,
Right.
that person does cover.
Sure, and when they
And there
come
might be
back,
some bookkeeping, or not bookkeeping, but
they
paperwork
work
that isn't
together,
covered, then when he comes back,
going over what they
Right.
had, what was going on.
Except my understanding, and I could be wrong, you need to ask Don himself, but my understanding was that the alternate building inspector was more so for if you had a conflict of interest, they'd do an inspection, right?
right,
They wouldn't do the things that Don does that are not the inspections, running the office, managing.
Right.
So
the-
when Owen was here, he did.
He did do that.
Unfortunately, Owen passed away and Don's not replaced him yet, but Owen held office hours once a week and when Don couldn't, he came in as well.
Because generally, these guys aren't, just a carpenter. These guys are building inspectors or commissioners in other towns. So they're used to the same software from town to town to town, it's permanentized, just using that office as a base. So he's got that money in the budget. No harm, no foul. You expect Don to take a week off and to have that guy come in during that week during the year. So, like you said, if they're only being able to fulfill 5% of it, then we need to rethink that budget time and say, you gotta get a better backup or no backup.
Well, and one thing that I talked about with Sophia was that we may be paying an alternate or an assistant a certain amount, and if they're expected to cover the office, now we're gonna pay them maybe the same amount as the person who would normally be filling that role, but closer to it. So they may work for $20 an hour, but they may get bumped to $25 an hour when they're covering the office. it seemed like.
And if that's coming out of the town clerk's salary line, because they're acting town clerk at that moment, and acting town clerk, I didn't have a better title for it. But, it's
C'est
just
la
that
vie.
some of the time an acting
Yeah.
town clerk, when you're acting town clerk, you get acting town clerk salary, and it comes out of the town clerk salary line. But that way, we're not paying double hours, right? That means that person is fulfilling those roles during those hours.
Right.
And that, therefore, all of that work will not be on the clerk when she returns.
Still on the clerk's shoulders.
Right, but some of it's been done.
Correct.
You might have to check that it's been done.
Well, but one thing Sophia said is it's not rare. I understand every employee has certain expectations of what they're able to do, but it's not rare that the department head is able to do things that someone working under them can't necessarily do.
That's absolutely true, but it's usually not, like, if they have an assistant, it's usually not a huge portion of the job. There's only some things, right? And the assistant takes the other things off your plate. So if you come back and you've got 20% of the job that you have to make up, you can probably make it up in the hours you've got. If you've got the whole job, you can't. I completely see your point, I just think that, like, well, I don't feel like working that day, I'm taking a vacation, so I'll make up those another day. I'm not sure that that's really, that you get to make up those hours, it's a vacation, you're on vacation, we paid you for the vacation, we're not gonna pay for vacation and extra.
Except that I don't think,
Oh, that's right, salaried, as part-time employees don't get vacation pay, forgive me, you're right.
which is something that
Well, who else is
you all
salaried?
are working on. What?
Who else is salaried?
Salaried is the
The
town
director of
administrator, the
operations.
police chief, the director of operations.
They also contracted except for the director. Right, chief of police is under contract.
Yeah.
TA is under contract, that's salary. Jim's salary, you can almost say everybody's salary because it's set in stone at the town meeting.
You could, but the salary carries another meaning, so.
I
But they're all
know.
full-time employees, which
Yeah.
now we're talking about part-time employees, and I
Yeah.
was wrong when I said that, I apologize.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. They do, cause they don't get paid if they don't work.
But we don't have too many of those in a position that's running an office. Nobody here is running an office.
I think it would only be the building inspector and the clerk. Well, I mean, I don't know, the
That
library
have
director?
part-time. Tax collector, treasurer,
Great,
Treasurer is contracted, it's a
Right.
firm.
yeah, that's what I'm saying, so that's out of our hands now.
and actually, isn't a tax collector,
She's elected, so
Elected.
she gets a salary.
right, elected?
So there's two offices basically. Then we have this potential concern, but maybe the assessors.
Yeah,
Assessors
they're
are
elected.
elected, and,
Yeah.
I mean, basically,
Right.
they have an assistant in there, so.
I think that, isn't that how it's set up right now, where it's just, you've got, when did that change? Because
Tell me what changed.
this policy, it seems like it should be what it was when we left, that if you are exactly what we said, if you go on vacation, you've got a line item for your help, it comes out of your pay. That was what it was then. Did it change somehow?
The official policy did not change, no. But board members were allowing certain departments to make up time. So I just wanted to clarify, because we do have a department that is asking for time off and to make up time, and, I feel as the town administrator and that person's direct report, that they have a support staff that at the very least can cover the hours or part of the hours to be open and answer questions and answer voicemails and emails and.
So
Like you
with that,
said,
you know,
60% of the job, or what, filing, dog licenses and.
Except that, since we're getting particular here, the town clerk assistant, or the town clerk staff, has told me that he is not willing to keep the office open at the wage that he's being paid. And if he's gonna do more work, he wants more pay.
I think that's fine.
Right, everybody agreed to that.
I
So
think I agree to it.
what amount of pay?
Well, whatever's to measure it with that type of position. We can look that up, easy enough, we look at everybody's pay, town to town to town, figure
What's
out what
his
that
current
is.
rate of pay?
Minimum wage.
15.50.
Right, so I would say even somewhere between 20 and 25 an hour would seem reasonable. What's the clerk pay an hour?
She's paid 25 something, I would say 20 if he's
So
not
20.
capable of
Right, if
everything.
you can't fulfill all the duties of the clerk, 20 seems reasonable.
Yeah, and it just comes out of the line item.
And I mean,
of the
I think
clerk's
it's fair
salary.
that he shouldn't get minimum wage for acting as an assistant clerk.
No, I
That seems
agree.
reasonable.
I agree.
And then the other thing would just be availability.
Right.
Because someone may have a 6-hour-a-week job and they can put 6 hours a week into it, and now you say your supervisor's gone, can you do 16 hours?
No, I think they do
Whatever.
They may well
whatever
say-
they can.
Right.
Yeah,
And whatever is left on the table when they get back, it's up to that office head to coordinate with their assistant to get the work done over the next course of week or two, and this guy gets paid back at his normal salary then, and everything still comes out of the line item.
And since we're talking about that one particular position, that particular staff member has been here for the whole shifts at the same time as the clerk the last couple of weeks, so I wouldn't see why availability would be an issue.
Also,
I don't know.
Unless he's
I
going
just-
on
I'm
vacation at the
just-
same time, and that's.
I'm just not going to assume. You
right,
can't
Right,
assume.
no, but I'm
Right.
just saying, he has been here for the.
and you never know, like 3 months from now, he might not be available, maybe
Yeah.
he'll be on vacation, who knows, but you,
Yeah.
you do the best you can. And perhaps it would be ideal if they didn't take vacation at the same time, if that's
Well,
possible.
that would certainly be a request
Right.
that we put in.
But also, remember when we agreed to the new hours and I raised the issue of, is the assistant gonna be there the whole day?
Mhm.
And you're like, no, she's not saying she's going to use him more hours, but I believe she did last week.
Yes, instead of 14 hours for the pay period, it was 16.5.
That's only an extra 2, but what's happening this week? What's
This
your
week,
two?
He was here the whole shift on Wednesday, which is how many hours? And today he was here for most of the shift, I think he left at 5.
And what's the maximum
Well,
amount of work?
that's later on the agenda, right?
Yeah.
Right, yes.
But
Yeah.
I don't think that wasn't the understanding that I had from the proposal.
The letter
and-
said that because Sophia was here, the staff didn't need to be here.
Wait,
Why
what
don't
was
we,
it, what
let's
was
just
it?
hear, communication, let's communicate directly with the people we
Okay,
want to talk to.
Sounds like a plan. Hello.
Hi, Steve,
I'm just stopping it.
we're about to enter executive session in a couple minutes.
That's all right, I like executives.
Okay,
We just
So
signed
where-
a
so
special
where do
town
we-
meeting warrant.
where does that bring us to? So we're discussing whether the vacation policy, do we wanna close that discussion and open? We can't, she's not here yet.
Can we finalize that discussion?
I would like to finalize it. Where
Well,
does
it
it
would take,
stand?
what's the motion?
Do you want me to motion?
I may wanna write one down.
Because I think that there's too many questions left unanswered. What is the rate of pay, other than we vaguely come up with some number in between the two
Alright,
current
so
rates of pay?
let's do the diligence and find out what the rate of pay is in surrounding towns.
Mhm.
So at least we have a basis as to what we pay, put that
For an
number on.
for an assistant.
What
Yes.
happens when, someone holding office hours goes on vacation?
Sure.
And then you say to the assistant, can you cover? And they say, no, I can't.
Then the office is closed.
So that would be
Yeah, I
the
mean,
question.
I think that's just has to be the way it is.
And you never, like, if we didn't have an assistant, then the office would just be closed.
It would be normally true. So those questions get answered by whom?
I can give you the rate, and when you go into executive session, I'll pull up my survey of
Okay.
other towns and tell you what the rate is.
All right, well, let's
What
get
else
back
would
to
we
it.
need to make a decision about that besides the rate of pay?
Well, I think it would make sense if it's just about one person in one office to speak with that one person from the one office. I think that's only right. I mean, if it's gonna be a general
It's
policy.
not, it's a general policy I'm asking you to make, but you happen to have a vacation request for next week.
What has Don Tirico done when he's on vacation
So he has an alternate that is,
that fills in?
right, that's called, if it's a length of time.
Right.
You just offer a day, no.
Right.
But we don't have an alternate building inspector right now.
He has alternate inspectors, yes, that go out and make inspections. He doesn't have someone that's currently coming in and doing the office. But it's my understanding from Don that they do check the voicemails, and he may check the emails and get in touch with the inspector. So they are doing work. But I can get all that information for you for when you.
And that's paid out of Don's salary,
No, he
has-
has an alternate support
and that's a
staff.
line item.
Yes.
Okay, so it is 6 P M. according to that computer.
Excuse that one.
We have lists on the agenda, 6 P M, executive session to discuss potential discipline or dismissal over complaints against the town clerk, purpose 1. I'd entertain a motion to enter executive session for that purpose. Is there a motion?
You just motioned.
So he was reading. Shoot, I will motion. Do you need to read it? I will motion to enter executive session for reason 1, dismissal of or complaints or charges against a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual.
And please add your motion whether or not we're gonna return to open session.
And we will be returning to open session afterwards.
I'll second the motion. Is there any discussion or comment on the motion to enter executive session?
I will actually make one comment, which was that I was going to propose, I would like to propose that the 4 items that were on the letter delivered to Ms. Walker last Friday be, how would I like to phrase that? Are put into the official record, and these other issues that have arisen regarding the clerk be forwarded to the HR director to review with Terry and put into her personnel file should that be necessary. So that we don't have to address them today in executive session, but more importantly, I think it will not only allow the select board to deal with other matters, but to take better advantage of having an HR director.
So are you saying
I
that
was,
you don't want to enter executive session?
I was allowing the board to weigh in on their opinion as to whether we should proceed with what I just suggested or go ahead into executive session. I will also say that I think that it is important that we draft a memo regarding last week. We came up with a policy about this a number ago regarding what happened last week, to be a permanent written record of what happened. And I don't know whether we need to do that in executive session or not, so that would be another issue to consider.
Yeah, so my sense was that if there's going to, or my understanding is that usually if you enter executive session for purpose 1, you're discussing charges or complaints against an employee, discipline or dismissal of an employee, and that those actions would take place in that executive session. The releasing of the public portion of it, in my view, comes when you review the minutes and determine whether or not they're appropriate to release to the public. So I do think executive session material, I mean, there's a reason we call executive sessions, should happen in executive session. At a later point, if the matter is closed, as the advice that we got says, when the matter is closed, the minutes may be released or a redacted version of the minutes may be released.
I wasn't talking about minutes though,
Yeah.
I was specifically talking about the drafting of a memo
Yes, so my,
per the policy we passed a
typically,
while back.
to speak generally, I would think that if you're discussing disciplinary items, then you're probably going to write a disciplinary memo, in which case that would happen in executive session.
Okay, then I think we need to call executive session. Then I will
Okay.
re-entertain, because I think that it's important. We passed a policy a number of months ago, that when we had an important meeting with anyone, an employee or any other, there would be written documentation regarding the outcome of that meeting, or what we understood to have taken place. Something separate from minutes, but in the case of an employee, it would go in their employee file, their personnel record. In the case of a meeting with anybody, a contractor or whoever, it would be us drafting a letter saying, here's what we understand to have happened. Separate from the minutes that the person would receive, because sometimes people walk away from a meeting with different views of what occurred. And I think in this case, when we're dealing with an employee, it's very important for there to be a written record, because many times in the past, and this is quite separate from this individual case, there have been select boards that have talked about something with an employee, and then that doesn't happen, and then the employee has come forth and said, well, there was nothing in my personnel, because nothing ever got drafted and put in the personnel file. It's like it never happened, because nobody goes back and reads through the minutes
And
to
thanks
see
that.
what that was. So I think it's an appropriate policy. My only question for you is, if you feel we need to draft that in executive session, then I think since it concerns what happened in last week's executive session, it would need to be an executive session. So let's have another executive session.
Yeah, so that would be, just to speak briefly to that, I would think that, anything any letter that's, or anything that's disciplinary in nature, we offer executive session
Okay.
to employees. That's my understanding.
Which is fine, so then we should do that.
There was no discipline, there was no.
I would agree, it's
No
not,
discipline.
there's no discipline, but we did have things that we thought needed to be remediated. I wouldn't call it discipline, I would call it remediation. We noted several
That's fine,
things
that's fine.
we wanted improved, we wanted paid attention to, we wanted delivered by a certain date. I don't think it is discipline,
Well, here's,
but if
okay,
you would be more comfortable doing it in executive session, I'm okay with it.
no, so you're onto something, you're right, in the sense that if we are discussing job performance and we are not discussing discipline or dismissal, and we're just discussing job performance and we're not disciplining or dismissal, we're just talking items of business,
Right,
then we are not, it's not that we shouldn't go into executive session, we're not legally allowed to.
okay, then, so we.
Okay, so can I grasp my head around what's going on here? So you made a motion,
To enter executive session.
But I wanted to discuss it, I did,
and then you made another motion that.
No, it wasn't a
perhaps-
motion.
it wasn't a motion,
But.
I was discussing
Okay,
whether we
Seemed like-
should enter.
and then if we were to give the information to HR and let them run with it, which is what they should be doing, then we would need to go into executive session tonight.
Correct, because if we were that we
Yeah,
would be
yeah.
able to, outside of executive session,
So, but
discuss remediation measures.
I think that in order to craft that document, regardless of whether it's
Disciplinary.
disciplinary in its nature or not, the facts that are coming out of it came from within
Exactly.
closed session. And that, until that session has been made public, that document that we want to create for the personnel file in the HR needs to be formed in executive session.
Point.
Yeah, if
I
they're
believe
charged,
so.
if they're charges.
Not even if they're charges, it's just we're talking about,
Because the
it's a
content,
continuation
Yep.
of the meeting in a way. And we're finalizing what was said and how we wanted to go forward with communications, et cetera, but it was done under executive session. And I think that if we're gonna bring up basically what was said and draft a memo that's gonna go into someone's personnel file, then that's private piece of paper that needs to be formed in private until those minutes are released.
essentially, that it would need to be an executive session, because if you don't do an executive session, content of last week's executive session meeting would be revealed.
Well, because here's why, because of the same reason you enter executive session purpose one in the first place, which is to discuss charges or complaints, discipline or dismissal,
Right.
right? Just because you discuss charges and complaints, discipline or dismissal, doesn't mean that you find that the charges or complaints are valid or that you issue a
Correct.
discipline or dismissal.
Correct.
But to discuss even the idea of charges or complaints, discipline or dismissal, we enter into executive session. That's why you go into executive session. It doesn't mean that you are then obliged to take disciplinary action.
Correct.
Right.
To the extent that we are not entering executive session to discuss charges or complaints, discipline or dismissal, we shouldn't enter executive session. But my sense was that we were discussing charges, complaints, discipline or dismissal.
But then it seems that Sue has, to me, the right track. Not to go there, but to let our HR director do the job that they're hired for.
Then we can't, if we're not going into executive session to discuss charges, complaints, discipline, dismissal, we can't go in.
I agree.
I'll vote no.
It's one of those two, but I think that if we're going in to create the document that was created in executive session, it's getting like too
I know.
freaky here. Then we need to do it in executive session, or we have to not create that draft out in public.
Can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
I actually drafted something for us so that we wouldn't have to start de novo, right? It's the second page of the 6 PM thing. Why don't you look through that and then maybe, once we see what's in there, it will help us to make a decision about whether we need to enter or not.
Just page 2 right after.
Yeah, it starts memo of understanding.
My only concern is we've been previously advised by council that if we deliberate on confidential documents in open meeting, they can lose their confidentiality.
Ah,
Well, that's true, right now.
All right.
Because it's
Point
sitting on our
taken.
table, it isn't open.
Well, as long as we're not
As
deliberating
as long
on
as
it,
we're not
reviewing it, but, so this is the question, I think we should really come to the conclusion and then vote on whether we wanna enter executive session. Do we want to discuss charges or complaints, discipline or dismissal? Not necessarily take discipline, but do we want to discuss matters that are in the area of charges, complaints, discipline or dismissal? Because if we're going to, we should enter executive session, and if we're not legally allowed to enter executive session.
Oh, I understand. Does Ms. Walker have the right to be asked what her request is prior to us making the decision?
well.
Well,
Or who makes the
the
first move?
employee, we would go into executive session if we agree that's what we wanna do.
Correct.
At that point, the employee has the right to have the
It's
matter
at
be heard
that
in
point,
open
it's not
session.
prior to us going in.
Well, we could be notified in advance, but we could also be notified, I believe, when we enter executive session. That the employee desires that the matter be heard in open meeting.
But that's something that you don't ask prior to us us coming to our agreement as to yes or no.
Well, the notice does say, please contact me if you would like to elect for the hearing to be held in open session. I would just re-clarify once we enter executive session.
Okay.
All right, if we
All right.
enter executive session,
So you're good with that? You understand all of that?
if we enter executive session for the purposes of drafting the memo, can we exit the executive session having decided upon due deliberation that we should do so because it isn't covered by the rule? Like, I don't
So,
understand how
no,
we
so-
can't deliberate before and we can't discuss the content thereof in an open meeting.
So here,
We're
exactly, but
stuck in a, you know,
we enter
castle.
executive session to discuss discipline or dismissal. Who knows, because of the open meeting law, whether or not, what direction, because we can't deliberate unless at meeting. No one knows, when you're one of three, no one ever knows how something's gonna go. But if we sense that the discussion pertains to charges or complaints, discipline or dismissal, we should enter executive session.
So I'm gonna call it remediation because I don't think it's discipline or dismissal. I don't think without revealing what happened last week, it didn't seem to me that anything rose to discipline or dismissal, but we did duly note things that were not working well. And I wanted to document what we thought about that and how we thought it should be remediated.
Okay,
To improve performance going forward.
unless
that's
anyone has
job
a
performance.
profound thought, I'll relay this, I think we should call a vote
Okay.
now. As to whether or not we're entering executive session, because I think it's been made clear. I think the standards for entering executive session, we've flushed out
So
thoroughly.
how would you vote?
I was gonna call the vote, but I would vote, I would vote yes, because I think that sometimes you discuss charges or complaints, discipline or dismissal, and that's the process you go through. Just because something doesn't result in discipline or dismissal, doesn't mean you don't consider it.
Okay,
So I would vote yes to enter executive session.
I'll vote yes.
I agree.
Okay.
That's three.
So the vote, Susan, Scott, and Justin all voted yes to enter executive session. So at this point, there's no one else in the room, but we will close the door and close the,
Online access.
and we are entering executive session at approximately 6:15 PM.
So Terry, the fact that you have requested that it stay open is that you agree to go
I
into
prefer
executive.
executive session.
Okay, so
So,
I'm gonna lay out again briefly I know we just did this last week, but some of the rights that Terry has. Terry, you have the right to be present at this executive session during deliberations which involve you. You have the right to have counsel or a representative of your choosing present and attending for the purpose of advising you and not for the purpose of active participation in the executive session. You have the right to speak on your own behalf, and you have the right to cause an independent record to be created of said executive session by audio recording or transcription at your own expense. And you've also, as we've reiterated, have the right to elect for the hearing to be held in open session. And I see that Jared Burke is here. I believe you are here as the counsel of Terry Walker.
I am, thank you.
So the process would be the same. There's 4 items listed here in the executive session notice. And then after discussing those items, discipline or dismissal would be considered, anything from no discipline to termination, anything in
so
that realm.
I'm going to reiterate what I said in open meeting, which is that, I sent this to Terry largely with the idea that I wanted the additional items that had not yet been addressed on the record. However, I feel that the 4 items, the substantive error with the state primary warrant as originally sent to the select board and its accompanying communications, delays, and poor responses. Item 2, the 2-month delay in submission of the ATM warrant articles to the AG's office. Item 3, revisiting the flow of information to the clerk's office regarding elected and appointed officials, including the boards and commissions list. And item 4, a complaint from Rebecca Hart dated 9/21/22 concerning lack of response to her request for an update on her voter registration should be forwarded to the HR director for her to revisit or to deal with, talk to Terry about these items and any remediation necessary, and she'll report to the board if she thinks that our involvement is necessary. I think that that's the proper use of the HR director, and we should use her to the fullest, and I don't think we need to take any more time on this. So it's up to the other members of the board, but that's what I propose.
Well, you also proposed that we,
Right, I just wanna get this off the table before we go to that.
well, it's not a motion, so it's a proposal.
I would, yeah, a proposal.
So.
I move that, we do that?
So you move that, instead of going through these 4 items,
Today, in executive session here, we let the HR director proceed with that.
Does that end our executive session?
No,
Because we didn't
because,
get our letter
because
in.
of the memo that we have to write.
Because the memo
For last week, that needs to be written.
the memo's being drafted on account of
Last week.
documentation of complaints. I'm just trying to make certain that what we're doing
I
can
know,
hold MGL, right? We wanna make certain that if we're gonna stay in EX, that we have a bona fide reason. So I think that if it's due to complaints that we received, that what we're trying to do now is to bring forth a paper document that states the discussions had and remedies that we've agreed to, so that it's a hard copy.
should,
I'm
Okay.
getting through it,
I know, I'm just thinking, why don't we do the one issue and then proceed to the second issue?
because I'm not certain if you do what you're asking, if you
That
can
would
stay
close
in
the executive
executive
session.
session.
Gotcha.
so
That's my.
My sense is that while you may not call this a disciplinary letter, I mean, it has an, it, you know,
But
it,
it may not be disciplinary, however, it's brought about by complaints that we received and dealt with. And I think the word complaint is how we stay in. That we're drafting this due to the complaints that we heard and worked with the clerk and the board. And that this is just the continuation and the finalization of that action that we kind of wrote up and agreed upon.
I don't think, I mean, I think this is a disciplinary letter. You know, a letter where you explain, some.
Well, I haven't read it yet.
Yeah,
So
well,
I
I'm just,
don't know the tone of it.
I'm glancing at it for the first time as well. But my sense is that if you bring up issues which we discussed last week, and then you said that you expect them to be resolved or how you expect to move forward, I think that does have, I think that is a disciplinary letter.
Most respectfully, if I may, I understand I'm not allowed to involve myself, but both of Miss Cooper's letters threatened potential termination of Miss Walker. I'm not sure how that cannot be considered disciplinary. That needs to be covered through the executive session. I'll leave it at that. I apologize for intervening. Both those letters by Miss Cooper that she has signed threatened discipline up to including termination. I'll leave it at that. Thank you, and I apologize again for intervening.
Well,
So,
the
what do you mean
recommendation
both?
is just that.
What do you mean both of the letters?
He means that this letter mentions the possibility of termination. So
Okay,
this
yeah.
would have to be addressed in executive session, there's no question.
Which one?
But what, the top letter, the
Uh-huh.
issue that, the letter that I issued to her on Friday, right?
On September
But we
23rd.
just discussed passing that to the HR director.
Mhm.
Therefore, that would take it up. So this is a wacky thought here, but it does occur to me that because this memo, the content thereof refers to last week and not to the issues this week, that even if we wanted to, like, this becomes an infinite regression. I've now handed this draft to you guys, and I suppose we could take the other road of taking the intervening week to review the draft and make edits and come back together next week in either a regular session or an executive session, should council advise us to do so, to revise that letter so that it can be a permanent record of last week's meeting. I don't know how to proceed through this legally. I do think that the items that were on today's can go to the HR director upon consultation with the HR director, and I think it would be best for the board and the town to do that. And that's my recommendation concerning the items on today's agenda. As to how we wanna deal with a record of last week's meeting, I will.
Can we
Would
give
like to hear
the HR director this as well as,
We can, but
and let,
even if she
because-
did actually vet this,
well,
even
she's
if
the
she-
one who's, the IT,
right?
the HR is supposed to meet with the people affected.
Mhm.
And then come back to the board with their recommendations.
Okay,
We may have put the horse before the
well, except the
cart
memo,
before the horse.
maybe so, but I was recommending that these 4 items
Uh-huh.
be given to the HR person. The memo reflects the items from last week,
Oh,
but I'm okay with sending the whole packet to her, sure, let's do that.
and that gets it off of our desk until it comes back to us with their,
Recommendation,
with the proper vetting.
that works. For me, does it work for you?
I think it
Because
does and it
we're
doesn't.
all- We're all a little, feeling like we're a little thin ice.
Well, at some point, you know, last week when we met and we discussed, concerns with the clerk, I did feel that it was good, the board as the management of the town to discuss with Terry as the town clerk, what possible issues and how to resolve them. But it also does become tedious to go item by item, some of which we learned were miscommunications at board meetings that require notice. Whereas an HR director can work more quickly through small things as they come up.
Mhm.
So, I don't know, I think that the board could tackle this if we want, like we had been doing, we went through each item. And then, if we felt that, and I introduced this possibility last week and no board member took it up, but a verbal warning, written warning, final written warning, suspension, performance improvement plan, termination, nothing. The board, that's ultimately the board's decision. Right, whether any disciplinary action is taken, just the way our organization is set up, the HR director doesn't actually.
No, she would have to then vet them, I think he's recommending that she vet the memo, discuss the other issues, modify the memo if it needs modification, and then present it to us for our deliberation.
Yeah.
That is what I
Yeah.
understood that he
Yeah.
was suggesting.
That's precisely it. Because it gets us out of that triangle until it's our turn. It's
And
not our turn yet. I don't think it is. I think we need to let the wheel turn and, it's up to the HR to develop any discipline or any.
remediation
Yes.
or process forward,
Right.
or what did you call it, verbal or written?
Verbal or written warning, that's
Yeah.
just, that's
I
one.
wouldn't consider it a warning, I would
No,
consider it
we
an
don't-
action plan.
It's
where
not up
you-
to us to
yeah.
consider anything
Right.
until it's been placed upon us. Because I think right now we're just ahead of it.
So
So basically, the idea being, there are charges or complaints brought against the town clerk. And she was noticed of 6 items last week and 4 items this week. But rather than the select board reviewing item by item, we will delegate that responsibility to the human resources director, who will report back to us.
with her recommendation for how we proceed.
Because she's gonna meet with Terry.
Right, with mayor, and she'll be here next Wednesday to do that, and she can draft something and have a recommendation for us in time for our meeting next week. And we can take it up then and review whatever her recommendation is. I don't wanna extend it
No,
endlessly,
no.
but I'd like it done expeditiously, and it takes
Well, it's
us out of the limelight here.
the policy, so we
Yeah.
just follow the policy
Alright.
guidelines. And it'll probably be 2 weeks and we'll have it back in our desk.
Terry, do you wanna speak to any of the charges or complaints brought against you?
Of course, I have answers to all of them.
But does she need to answer us, or can she answer HR? Do we
Yeah.
need to talk about it, and then she talks about it with HR, and then we talk about it again?
Well, I guess the only thing being, like, with some of the issues last week after we discussed them, I think we came to the conclusion that they were not disciplinary, and so we might not even refer them to the human resources director.
I see.
Because we've
I
already
feel-
done our
Right, but
own.
I feel like we did last week, but if we don't
Regardless of how
issue a
we
memo-
feel they are.
Right, if we don't issue something, even if it's bad communication, look, we could say every week, oh, it's really problematic communication, oh, that's terrible communication, whatever will we do? But if we never formalize that in any way, there's no accountability whatsoever. We could just go on with another year of bad communication and frustration, and there's no way to address it, quantify it, or do anything unless it's documented as an ongoing issue that needs remediation, and there's a plan for how to do that.
So we felt last week that there was no disciplinary action to be taken.
But
That's
but
great.
we repeatedly stressed problems with communication, and we need a way to formally address that.
I'm 100% with you. My point was that we shouldn't have come to that conclusion ourselves prior to the HR director being involved in handing us their
Recommendation.
recommendation. That's what I'm saying, we're just ahead of the game. No,
So,
I think that Ms. Walker has every right to speak and for whatever time frame she'd like to tonight. But I think that at least it seems like we're kind of in the right direction, that we feel like it should go to HR and let HR do their thing. I mean, it's what we got them for.
Do you wanna speak to the items, just since you're here, touch on the 4 things, and then it sounds like we're probably gonna turn them over to the Human Resources Director to review.
Ms. Walker, if I may advise you, if this is going to be dealt with by HR, rather than, essentially double jeopardy, I think I would agree with Mr. Jensen and just let HR handle this, have them make the decision, because clearly those first 6 issues have already been determined to not warrant any discipline. Rather than go through this a second time with HR, if it's okay with the select board, and I'm deferring to you, if it is your intention to send this to HR, I would simply say that Ms. Walker should not be commenting again if she's going to need to communicate once again to HR down the road. Again, Mr. Jensen, I appreciate everything you've said so far. I think you are a clear-headed, clear thinker here, and I appreciate everything that you've done so far. Thank you so much.
Okay, that was addressed to you, Terry. So Terry, do you wanna speak to the items, or you don't?
At this point, I don't know what to do. This has been going on for a half hour. I don't know what to do right now.
If it's the intention of the select board to refer this to HR, I would let HR handle it.
Then we'll let HR take care of it.
Okay, is there a motion to refer these items to HR to review and report back to the select board?
I so motion.
I would add to review with Ms. Walker and her alone and or her attorney as she would feel
Agree.
needed.
Can I get a wording on this amended motion from Scott?
Yeah, he does her. Melissa, what I say?
Motion to refer, these
All of this
Complaints.
to the HR
complaints,
for discussion with Terry and or her
And
attorney, she has the right to have your attorney present anytime.
so it's a motion to refer these complaints
This
to
whole
the HR
issue-
director for review.
Yeah.
After, with consultation from Terry
Well,
as the town clerk.
Well, she
Well, I don't
has
think you
to.
can ever say, you can't tell Terry that the HR director is gonna talk to you and you're gonna be locked in the room without anybody by your side.
And I think it's implied that when the HR director reviews something, it involves the person that's being reviewed and not just,
Not just a review.
not just a review.
Yeah.
They have to have something to review and they have to discuss it.
So we're gonna take this entire matter and hand it over to HR for HR to discuss with Terry and or Terry's lawyer. And then make the evaluation and the determination, and we await that determination from the HR director, and at that point, we may ask you to come back for the final chapter of this great,
Are we also
Endeavor.
referring the matters from last week to her?
oh,
I think the
I
whole,
think the whole thing is a bundle, 10.
okay,
Okay, there is a motion on the floor to refer all of the complaints from last week's executive session and this week's executive session to the HR director for review, and the review will include meeting and discussions with Terry and Terry's lawyer if she so desires. And at that point, the HR director will report back to the select board, at which point the select board may request Terry's, or invite Terry to another executive session to resolve any recommendations from the HR director. That is the motion on the floor.
second.
There's a second. Is there any further discussion or comment on that motion?
will the HR, will her meeting with the 3 of you be an executive session?
Anytime that the HR director, anytime that this board deliberates on charges or complaints against you or discipline or dismissal of you as an employee, we
Or
are
any
obligated to invite you to the meeting. We are legally required to opt to invite you to the meeting. So we're gonna deliberate with the HR director on charges or complaints against you or discipline or dismissal. We're legally required to invite you to that meeting. We can't hold a meeting where we deliberate your charges or complaints against you or discipline or dismissal of you without inviting you to that meeting. That's how I understand it.
And I think also my understanding is that the HR director would meet with you about the complaints separately, not with us, just with you and or your attorney should wish him to review the complaints before she presents anything else. Does that make sense?
Is there any other discussion or comments before we vote on the motion? Okay, there being none, we'll call a vote. Susan?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Justin, yes. And the motion carries, and select board at this time will not take up these items to consider them or consider discipline. Instead, we will refer that to the HR. We will refer these items to the HR director, who will meet with Terry, her lawyer, if she requests it, to, and then eventually report back to the select board on her findings and recommendations for a plan. Is there any other executive session business that anyone feels we haven't dealt with?
None of which I'm aware.
What was that? Nothing from Terry. Alright, I would move that the board adjourn executive session and return to open meeting.
Second.
Is there any discussion on that vote? Alright, there being none, we're voting on adjourning the executive session and returning to open meeting. Susan?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Justin, yes. And the board is returning to open meeting at 6:36 p.m. Thank you for joining us.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Terry.
You're welcome.
Good night.
Okay. I see Dennis on the phone. Dennis, are you there? Dennis Lynch.
About what?
11.
Okay.
But he may have been
Sidetracked by that.
waiting out. So
Alright, so are we back to 5?
is there any way to, well, I guess Dennis will be on the call. We'll just deal with the other items and then we'll deal with Dennis. Unless you're there right now, Dennis, we'll deal with the GZA item right now.
Is he there?
I don't think he is.
Just
Alright.
unmuted, so you-
What's that?
Just unmuted.
Are you there, Dennis?
Yes, good evening.
Good evening, thank you for joining us. So we are going to jump to item number 11, GZA Municipal Vulnerability Grant Phase 2 proposal. So this is the proposal from the engineering firm who is going to, if we agree, undertake the final design and permitting. Is that true, Dennis?
That's correct. The Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Grant.
Do you wanna speak briefly to the project? Scott's here and he hasn't been on the board, I don't think since phase 1, right? So if you wanna update us all, how it's going and briefly what phase 2 will look like, other than that we have the whole proposal in front of us.
Sure. The project is really an attempt to develop resiliency for climate change impacts. Essentially, climate change impacts inland for towns relates to, or the focus is on flooding, preventing flooding. And in the past, the town of Monterey center of town has had issues with flooding along the Concoplatte River. And communities that have this type of concern and need for funding to assist developing projects. In this particular case, the project involves the expansion of the existing 15-foot wide culvert just on the east side of Town Hall. Phase 1 was completed utilizing GZA Geoenvironmental, along with the Berkshire Regional Planning Commission. And this is the phase 2 project that was also approved. And the project essentially involves completing the initial design. They call that the preliminary design, and that was completed last year at 60% completion. And this final design will be the remaining 40%, in addition to the required permitting and approvals related to work to be done on the Concord River. So
Thank you.
It's essentially a 2-year project, by the way, I should add that.
So in 2 years, we'll have 100% final design and permitting for the project?
That's the objective. And then phase 3 would be, if the town approves, funding would be for construction.
But it's my understanding, if I'm not mistaken, Dennis, the town isn't obligated to go forward with the construction of the project just because we've gotten this far, right?
That's correct. That's correct. It's essentially a new project, I should say, the next phase in the overall project would be phase 3, and that does not require to be done, but the town would be prepared. So it should, the town of Monterey conclude that it's necessary to do this, given the climate change impacts that we see happening throughout the region. A major drought, for example, is one example, and flooding does occur.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments on the proposal? Any reservations?
I'm just trying to make sure I understand. So did we already, are you in the process of getting the phase 2 grant, or have we already gotten the phase 2 grant?
So Monterey has received and had been awarded the grant.
Okay, so, and the work is proceeding. Is the question whether we're accepting the grant?
Yeah, so we have the grant, but then, Dennis, correct me if I'm wrong, we have, a certain amount of money to now do this engineering portion of it, phase 2. And there's a proposal from GZA, which is an engineering firm, to do the work. And this is their project, the scope of the project. And this is, just finalizing that we wanna go with GZA. And Dennis, would you expand on how GZA was selected? Were they the only firm considered, or how did that process work?
Back in phase 1, the town sought to select a firm that was experienced in this area, and GZA was already providing work for the town, as I understand. They had been doing work related to the Lake Garfield Dam, for example. That is, annual evaluations, I believe, took place. So the town was familiar with their work, and they performed very well on the phase 1. And that basically laid the pathway to proceed with phase 2 if the select board chooses to do so. They are a well-recognized firm by the state.
So, thank you, Dennis. To talk money, so the total estimated budget is $83,420, which I believe, would our phase 2 grant money fully cover that amount?
Yes.
And Melissa, how would this relate to procurement? Since they've already begun the project, we don't need to put out an RFP?
Engineers don't actually.
Related to the overall project or the GZA?
Melissa was just informing us that engineers are not subject to procurement.
That's correct. In the 30B procurement process, they are exempted.
And we feel that they're the best firm to go with, because they're a good firm, but also because they've been doing previous work, including phase one of this same project.
That's correct. And their work was accepted by the state, and they were recognized in the application for phase two as a team, a part of the team for the town of Monterey.
Dennis, Scott Jensen here with a question. We just went through something similar just today regarding a lawyer who gave us a estimated price that came in well over twice the amount. You guys are coming from Boston. There's some pretty hefty dollar values per hour. And one of the things is that there's time being driven from shop to site, et cetera, which is all understandable. Is there a local GZA office in, say, Berkshire County? Or are these people coming all the way from Boston out here to do their site and engineering work? I'm just curious, looking at the dollar values, GZA has put together $83,000+. What's our kind of a guarantee that it doesn't come in at 120?
I do.
If I may, this is a contract. With Jeremiah, we didn't have a contract.
Well, also.
Understand, oh, so that's this is contractual.
This is contractual.
So, and furthermore, page 5 it does say estimated budget.
Yeah.
But it does say at the bottom of that paragraph below the table, the town will be informed if work beyond the proposed budget is required.
Which page is that?
5.
Okay.
So that gives us pretty good standing, to limit the amount. So the phase 2, sorry, you may have already answered this, but the phase 2 covers that, grant money covers that whole amount?
Yes, the way it's going to work is in a state grant, federal funding from another grant can be used as the local match. So the town of Monterey was lucky enough to get so-called 319 grant, Section 319 of the Clean Water Act, for the Hoop High Road project for Lake Garfield. So the work being done with federal dollars can be used as a local match for this grant.
Unrelatedly, that makes sense, Dennis. Unrelatedly, do we have a water management best practices grant funds available?
Yes, I believe it was 35 that we got from the community compact, and then the MVP for this one is 124,071.
So the phase 2, we've received 124 for phase 2?
The grant we were awarded is 124,071.
What grant is that? That's the
municipal vulnerability.
Okay. 124.
And we also have, I can't remember if it's 35 or 40, but we
I think
haven't used that
35.
yet from the best practices.
So is that going to match our portion of this, or do we have a plan for that at the moment?
Dennis, weren't we using that for any overages on this?
The 319 federal grant will help match this state grant.
Is
So
this,
Yeah,
More than
essentially, if we did not have, excuse me,
24 plus 30 to 40 is a lot more than 83
You're also gonna pay for BRPC, you signed that contract last week.
on
Yes.
this.
They're gonna be administering it.
And how much is that?
but that 124 figure is only for phase 2, phase 1 was a separate thing, and that's all said and done.
that's correct. And I can tell you that both, not only GZA, but the Berkshire Regional Planning Commission performed very well. And the project team was successful to stay at that budget number, did not exceed the phase 1 budget number.
Seems a little loose.
Pardon?
Just seems a little loose.
What's a little loose?
The actual dollar values that we're supposed to be responsible for.
Well, yeah, I mean, since we don't have any money appropriated, we need to be sure, and it seems it is the case, but we need to be sure that the town's not on the hook for something. But it sounds like we have 120 plus from the phase 2 MVP grant, and how much is going to be BRPC?
I don't have that on my computer.
And I can find.
It was last week, right?
The other one is community compact.
I didn't realize that
Which
BRPC Community Compact was about this part.
So we had, in fiscal year 22, we received a $35,000 award for the Monterey Watershed Management from the Community Compact. So that's what, $60,000 total. And I can go in the other room and find out.
BRPC, I'm pretty sure is 23,220 for administering phase 2.
How much, 20 bucks, right?
23,220 for administering phase 2.
So it's about 138 out of that 160 that she was just saying.
So that MVP best practices, we can spend to pay this, no
The
problem.
Community Compact, yes.
Yes, sorry, I confused two things. So the community compact best practices, 35,000, we don't have allocated towards anything, and it
We
could
have
go
it
towards anything.
allocated towards this.
Okay, now it seems like we have an excess of money, a surplus.
It's possible. But we can roll it over to phase 3.
Because out of all these funds, the MVP, the community compact best practices is the most flexible.
But the MVP is gonna be the most flexible. Whatever we don't use from the community compact will go back to the state.
And when do we have until to expend that? Can we encumber it? We can't encumber it.
We can ask for an extension.
Well, that would be good then to lead with that money, right,
With the Community Compact money.
before it disappears.
Do we have any other projects that would be sensible to do with that money?
No, it's for this project.
It's for this project, then, yeah, okay.
Okay.
Just trying to find where it is.
Do we feel comfortable accepting this proposal from GZA tonight? Or do we want to wait a week?
I will confess that I did not read this entire document.
Why don't we wait a week and then we'll have a very clear picture of the funds available and,
I suspect we probably should, but I feel like I'd rather know a little more about it.
well, once, you can't take back a signature, so.
Yeah. Dennis, will it cause any problems for us to wait a week?
No,
Okay.
that would not be a
Okay.
problem.
It won't affect the meeting that we're having, the kickoff meeting?
Yeah, well, that's a very good point, Melissa. I believe that was October 5th. Hopefully, if the select board chose tonight to accept the GZA proposal, if the board does wait a week, that would have to be postponed, that kickoff meeting. And we've received emails from the MVP regional coordinator asking the town to begin the grant as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
Next Wednesday's the fifth. I
Alright,
think we're not actually meeting next week till the sixth.
till Thursday.
Right,
Yeah.
usually keep that day off too,
What, Thursday?
the day after.
Understood.
Alright,
Does
so
that mean
we
we
will,
should try to do it tonight?
let's
Because
come back to
that's
this
the-
next week. And we're sorry for the delay. And we'll have a really good sense of the money.
So you're gonna have to postpone the meeting, Dennis.
How many people are in that meeting?
How many people are in that meeting?
Dennis, myself, the director of operations, I think GZA comes to it as well, BRPC.
Yes.
I'm sort of feeling like we need to just do it or not.
Yeah, there's some protections put in there.
But it's a kickoff meeting for an $83,000 project.
That may go over, but that we're covered up to about 140, I think.
How much is an MVP phase 2 grant? It was 140? Yeah, can we just get an exact, we can do some quick math. Fine.
I think you're fine.
And then I think it was 124 and 35.
And we'll
One
leave
24,071.
124,071 from MVP phase 2.
35,000 from the community compact.
Yeah. And 319, does that play into this or no?
I'm not sure.
Okay, so if you take the 124 for MVP phase 2, and you take the calculator, and you take 124,071 minus,
Grand.
We have an extra like 20.
Yeah, but then you gotta also take off BRP.
yeah, so
I
we've
added
already
that in.
signed BRP.
So the total of 124,071 and 35 is 159 and $71, 159 grand. And the total BRPC plus the 83 is 106. So we have more than 50,000 additional dollars.
Well, except that the MVP money expires, but even without the MVP money, we have 17 extra additional.
Well, it expires, but we can extend it.
But we, yeah.
We hope, but what happened with Jeremiah was we said, submit us bills early so we can pay
Mhm.
out of last fiscal year budget, which would have been fine. And then we didn't get the bills till later than we thought, and
I thought it was the community compact money that expired.
yes.
You said the MVP money.
Yeah,
right.
I'm
That's
sorry.
okay, I do that all the
The
time.
community compact is very good about extension.
Okay.
I can say that.
And we don't even need their money necessarily, it's just gonna help us save money towards phase 3.
Right, and we could pay that part first, and then, right, use those monies for the first payment so that it is used in time.
We can do that to the extent we can, and if we can't, we're still covered. So I would move that the board accept the proposal from GZA for phase 2 of the municipal vulnerability program for the culvert over the Tonkapot River.
I would second.
Is there any discussion, further discussion or comment on this motion? Okay, there being none, I'll call a vote. Susan?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
And Justin, yes. And do you want, can I do a signature on here, or you gotta
On
know?
page 6, that's fine.
Do you need a
Oh, you
second?
want me, I'll
I
give you
can-
mine, I'll give you mine. Sorry.
It's just one.
Yes.
I can handwrite the thing, right? Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you very much. And we'll proceed with the October 5th meeting.
Perfect,
Thank you, Melissa.
you're welcome.
Thank you. That deals with item 11, good luck at the kickoff meeting. This does bring us back to old business number 4. Does it make sense to invite the town clerk in to discuss old business 4 and new business 9 and 10, if she's available?
Where does Sophia stand on this office coverage and makeup kind
Table
of
it
thing?
until afterwards.
She agreed, she read my suggestions that I gave you in my summary, and she agreed with everything that I proposed. And I did look,
I'm
the
sorry.
range for,
Where's the summary, under what number?
and I just moved mine, so it's either 7 or 8.
Department roundtables, relays, come
Big
on.
time.
Part-time
So
employees,
it's just town administrator, and then it's number
Bring her in for
3 and 4. On mine, on my report.
Should we bring her in?
for number 4, but I think 9 and 10.
So I did look, and it's $15
With all
to
my
$20
ways.
an hour for support staff.
Because that process is what the HR director should,
which one?
9 and 10.
And Susan, you did have her look at that memo, she read it today.
She did?
So what's item 4 in his, my next item?
Just the coverage for vacation time.
Oh, okay, we're going back to
Makeup
that.
for vacation, right, we never, I think the
Right,
feeling was
yeah.
it wasn't completed,
I was looking, and I'm like, I have Kimama next.
right,
Yeah, what's that about? I mean, what are we
I
doing?
think he was just keeping it on.
it's just on there because it's been on there, I don't really, I was just gonna say we need to table it to another meeting because I still need to meet with the fire chief and the building inspector. Since I said I would take point on finding out what the story was. I have some information, but
Well,
it's incomplete.
the story of the building inspector has really nothing to do with noise.
No, but there were other issues. Building permit issues, fire inspection issues.
It's not our department.
Okay,
I don't think we have a right to stand up to discuss that.
okay.
I mean, that's like
Right, no,
saying that,
and with the,
you know,
so as far as the noise goes, then there's no,
not until we get,
a noise ordinance.
there's nothing we could do up the hill to Hume.
I think the only thing we could
Other
do,
than have them come in and just say, hey, look, you know, work with
I
us.
think we could send them a letter.
Well, I think that would be a great thing.
Okay,
Alright,
sorry to interrupt,
that's okay.
that subject, but Terry, we were discussing office coverage during vacation.
Mhm.
And the board, so far the consensus is that if there's, and correct me if I'm wrong, but so far the consensus is that in order to keep regular office hours available to the public, if there are staff in a department who can fill in when the person in your case, when you're holding office hours, if you're on vacation, if staff could fill in for you, then that keeps the office hours more regular.
Okay.
But then we also discussed that the wages that staff may be paid, we may need to pay them more because it's an additional responsibility of keeping the office
Okay.
open. Right, is that what we discussed?
And then there was the question of where those funds would come from.
Well, in past years, they always came from the line item of clerk salary, unless there is a line item now
If they're serving
of
as a clerk.
of an assistant clerk. We would need to review that this coming budget and add more into it to cover those potential 10 to 20 hours. But this year, the way it worked, I think when I left and you first got on, was that if you went on vacation and had somebody fill in, just like having Gary here at any day, he's part of your line item budget.
Yes.
So that's where it would come from, but now we're saying that we'd like to bump that pay up a little bit to be a little closer to what the duty is for that time frame. And we're just trying to figure out, does that additional $5 an hour hypothetically come out of that line item? Because it's more than you may have put in the
Yes.
beginning of the year.
Right,
So there's a part of your vacation that when you go on it, you may actually, in the long end of your budget, run dry a week or so early. Because the extra money that he's gonna get paid to fill that position would deplete that fund just a little faster.
But if there are fewer hours in the town clerk salary item during that period at the close of the fiscal year, since
That's right,
it's
because that's not
happening
a
when she's on
salary
vacation,
position.
right, since
And I get you.
since she's on vacation,
Right,
could that
right,
money
right.
then be moved
I
from
was
one line to the other to
Yeah,
compensate
we
for it?
do internal transfers
Yeah.
at the end of the year.
Right,
No, you're absolutely right, it's not like you don't get a paid vacation.
no, I
Right.
usually make up, because it gets behind some, so I would always come in and work like probably 10 hours, like 30 1 week and then another, like to make up.
Right, but you only put in for your 20, correct?
No, I would do my makeup hours. If I took 5 hours off, I would come in and make up 5, like on a Saturday or Sunday or something.
Yeah, but it's a wash,
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying.
I-
It's not like you're doing your 20 and another 10
no,
at the end of the week, writing a bill for 30 hours.
No.
Right.
No, so
Yes,
what's,
yes.
so what's been happening, if I'm not mistaken,
Mhm.
is if Terry goes on vacation one week and she's got, I know it's 19.75, but let's just say it's 20
yeah.
for simplicity's sake. And she has 2 10-hour shifts for simplicity's sake.
Mhm.
She doesn't work one 10-hour shift. I believe the way it's been working is she will put in for one 10-hour shift and get paid for 10 hours that week. And then the next week, put in for possibly 30 hours. So that over the 52 weeks, it only totals 20
Understood.
hours per week.
Yeah.
See, I don't have a problem with that, because you're doing the work.
Mhm.
Right? Isn't that kind of what we had said?
It is, the only problem comes with the office, being the availability to the public.
Well, we've kind of agreed that the policy would be that while somebody is away on vacation, if they have an assistant, that assistant would try to step in and maintain office hours as best they can.
Right, but if the assistant is serving as let's call that person no longer just a
Well, there's
what
still
is
the
it,
assistant.
staff,
clerk.
no, but if they're not, if they're acting as an assistant clerk and they're getting paid as an assistant clerk and they're serving the duties of an assistant clerk,
Uh-huh.
then the hours they serve should no longer be needed to be done by the clerk, because they would be doing the job.
Well-
Am I wrong? Where am I wrong?
Well, we gotta remember what our conversation was earlier, is that not everybody that, like, in my business, not everybody can do what I do.
Right.
They came in the office, they'd be like, oh boy. So that's the difference, is that there always will be a percentage of decline while that person's gone, and there will still be a pile of something that needs to be rectified.
I'm okay with that, but if it all comes down to clarity on what the assistant can actually do, because as I said, if the assistant can only meet 5% of the clerk's duties, I don't think it's appropriate to pay him $20. Because then you come back and you have those hours all over again.
Mhm.
If he can do 80%, then I don't think the clerk necessarily needs to make up the entire 10 hours. She might only need to make up 2, because the assistant clerk would be serving the other 8, and I'm just using the demo hours.
Yes.
Example
Understood.
that you used. So I think in order to make a reasonable decision here, we would need more information about what duties the assistant clerk can actually do. And I recognize it would be approximate, because what the duties are in any given week change, right? I'm assuming.
Daily, hourly.
Of course,
Yes.
of course. So
Mhm.
I recognize that it's hard to put a number, but we need at least some type of ballpark of
As a percentage.
Okay.
what percentage of your duties that person could serve as an assistant clerk. Because if we're gonna pay him as an assistant clerk,
Okay.
does that make sense?
Yeah, done.
And the good thing about Gary, if he doesn't know how to do something, when he used to be in my office when I was on vacation, he would tell them, I'll take your name, number, Tara, get back to you. But he can do like dog licensing, get the mail, do the agenda, post the agendas, things like that. There's a lot of things. I mean, he's busy the whole time he's here. He's learning, but like he said today, I don't know how to be a town clerk, but I can, we work together all the
Like on
time,
TV.
so, but he's intelligent enough that he's not gonna give people the wrong information. He can do a birth certificate, he can make a copy. I don't know if he can sign it because he's not the clerk,
Right.
So
there are some signatory things that he's probably restricted on.
Exactly.
Notary public, he's restricted on,
Yeah,
but we've got a TA who's got a stamp.
Yeah.
So,
So
I mean,
he's,
if you could come up with what you would honestly say over the course of the year, what percentage of the work that you do he cannot do
okay,
legally,
Mhm.
or just because he hasn't been trained to that.
Right.
I think that would help us figure out what the pay scale would be. And then that would also help us figure out that if he works for 10 or 8 hours, that's kind of the equivalent of 10. Or 6, sorry, the other way.
Right.
So that there's still a couple of hours in
That
that,
you would need
that
to
could need to make up, so that it isn't 100, because he's not doing 100%.
Right.
And that would probably help formulate a
More
policy
important
that
policy.
allows for some flexibility in each department's assistance, not the knowledge that the assistant carries in that department. It may also behoove us to think that, okay, if we've got somebody who can only do 60%, that perhaps we offer training to get that higher up.
Right.
Mhm.
Because the better trained we are, the more capable we are to get stuff done.
Would concur.
This is information that Sophia and I have actually both requested several weeks ago, but we haven't received yet. Sophia requested it directly from Gary, and through Justin and I requested it from the clerk.
What would be, how long do you think it would take you to put together that list of duties and give us an approximate percentage?
Well, do we need a list of actual duties, or do we just need like a, he can do 80% of the job. Do we need to know what it is, or what he can't do?
This is a good question.
I don't know, it's hard to put figures, basically the point being, we're looking at maybe someone can keep, and I think this used to be the arrangement. Someone kept the office open while you were on vacation.
Yes, and.
Okay, and so
Mhm.
that may eliminate the need for some of the makeup hours. So maybe if there's 10 hours that you take vacation, and if you have staff who's willing and able to work those hours, maybe you make up 4 hours the next week of makeup work. It's hard to micromanage to some degree to this level of figuring out exactly what those percentages are and what that figure is, but maybe we can come to an agreement that if you're gone for 1 week, that's 19.75 hours, that if town clerk staff can cover those 17.75 of office hours, it takes you 5 hours the next week to make up what would have slipped through the cracks. Or maybe it's, I don't know, it's hard to work through.
I just don't wanna, have Gary embarrassed again, because when he worked here before, he didn't know everything, and he knew, and people, and one of the selectmen came to me and said they had so many complaints, they didn't want Gary back in the office when I wasn't here. And I said, Gary, you're sitting there answering the phone, taking, messages, answering people's questions, telling when I'll be back, and I thought he did an amazing job. One of the selectmen told me he had so many complaints, he wanted my office closed when I wasn't here. So then, you get mixed feelings about, now you have a different board and they feel differently.
And wasn't here at the time of the complaints. I know that when I spoke with Gary a while back, this was a couple months ago at least.
Yeah.
He said he was willing to do it, but he wanted a better wage consistent with an assistant clerk. And I'm fine with that as long as he can fulfill the duties
Right,
of an
no,
assistant
I understand
clerk.
what you're saying.
Right, yeah. I'm okay with paying someone for their job as long as they can do the job.
That's good.
But I think when is a reasonable time to ask for that? Like, how long would you need to prepare the information we need?
Well, I'm working on the boards and commissions, so, by the end of the month.
What exactly?
What's the today?
Today's the 28th.
Oh, no.
What exactly are we looking for? Because I have already requested from Terry a list of Gary's duties and responsibilities,
Yeah.
which she's working on.
Okay.
So the other question is, I guess it's
To me,
this,
that
a
would be part of
plan
it.
for when Terry goes on vacation.
Mhm.
What office hour coverage looks like and what makeup time afterwards looks like,
Okay.
right?
If you wanna kind of sit with me, you worked for me for like months, so we could sit down and remember what you did before you
Yeah.
became a selectman.
I don't think I ever would have held, I don't know. I don't know, other than it seems like we need a comprehensive plan that takes into account budgeting.
Mhm.
What the strengths and weaknesses of different staff are, what their capabilities are, and what keeps the office open, while also making sure at the end of the day, all the work gets done without going over budget.
Mhm. We can work on it.
We need to come up with a wage for town clerk staff that's covering the office, we would need to, but I really think it comes as a plan all at once, right?
I would agree, and I think that, we would not be able to come up with a wage unless we have a sense of what duties he could perform.
October 12th, we can come up with a plan.
Oh, yeah,
Bye.
'cause
Okay,
I'll be-
by October 12th.
How are you gonna address the current request for time off that we're also requesting at that time?
So,
That's why this was on the
Okay,
agenda
right.
today.
so I don't have that in front of me.
That will happen momentarily.
Yeah, okay. So you've got a request for time off coming up?
in October, the first, Wednesday and Friday in October.
So that's next week,
So what
shockingly
was
enough.
your plan on the office being open?
Well, always before it was closed, because I was told to close it when I wasn't here.
By who? Just curious.
Well, the other selectmen before you guys.
Okay,
And,
okay.
so, I didn't have a plan because it was always closed.
Okay. Well,
So now,
No.
So
Knowing-
the
knowing
current plan
that
was
we
that
like
it would
it
be
open.
closed and you would work double hours the following week.
well,
Was
to-
that, I'm just
to,
asking.
to make up my.
Right.
Yes.
This is, there's an updated form that should be used.
so getting the flavor of the board's request that it would be nice if the office was open as many hours as
Okay.
perhaps it could be.
And like if there's people want to early vote, he can do that. You know, he can do early voting,
Good.
he's.
So that's next Wednesday and Friday.
Yes.
So what we need to figure out is, it's really too late for this particular one, because what we need to figure out is if Gary's available
Oh,
October
right.
5th and October 7th, what we would pay him to keep the office open.
Well, the money's in the budget, so it's really just a matter of, Melissa said that she would get those figures from surrounding towns.
Which I gave you, 15, 20.
What if we
Okay.
offer Gary 20 to keep the office open on the 5th and the 7th?
I'm fine with that.
I'm
How do
fine
you
with
feel
that.
about that coming out of your budget?
Um,
I mean, it's like $100 if you think about it in the overall scheme of the budget.
that's
He's
fine,
got 20 hours.
that's fine.
And then that would leave some money, because he could be, some of that money could come out of the town clerk's staff account,
Yes.
but the difference between what he's currently paid and 20 would come out of the town clerk account, but then you could use, if you need makeup time for whatever slipped through the cracks, you could work that makeup time the following week.
That's fine, yeah.
And you know what might be helpful, since this is upcoming and we're trying to craft a bigger policy? If he can keep a record of what he does do, and you can keep a record of what you had to make up,
Okay.
that would be a start. It
That would
would
be a
give us
great
a
start.
really good example of
Yeah.
what's involved.
Mhm.
I mean, it's just a snapshot, because if it happened in March, it would be different, but a snapshot's better than no shot at all.
Mhm.
No, that's good.
So I would move that the board offer Gary Shaw as town clerk's staff $20 an hour to keep the town clerk's office open for the regular hours on Wednesday, October 5th and Friday, October 7th, while Perry's on vacation. And then,
Pending his availability.
offering this to him, and then Terry can calculate what amount of funds are available for her to make up anything that slipped through the cracks while Gary is working.
That's fine.
Yeah, I second that.
Okay, second motion. Any further discussion or comment? Okay, I'll call a vote. Susan?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Justin, yes. Motion carries. So we will reach out to Gary and tell him what we are
Ask
offering
him.
him.
Tell him and ask him.
Tell him what we're offering him and ask him if he is
Cover
willing,
those
is
as best
able.
he can. I mean, he may not be able to do it every hour.
But even 5 hours would be better than no hours.
Because we'll
Yeah.
post them.
Yeah.
At least they'll be posted.
Posted,
People will
right.
know.
Yeah, any hours that he can't, we'll put on the calendar like we usually do, just office closed.
Right.
Sure.
Do we wanna do 4 also, since I think that.
I think that is 4.
No, that was 3, that was time off request.
So you're looking at my report.
Oh, I'm sorry.
My report corresponds to some of that, but
No, that was
I
4.
think you want
No,
item
no.
10 on the agenda.
Item 10 on the agenda, sorry. No, it wasn't 10. Your item 4 is part-time employees putting in for more than weekly approved hours.
That's not for Terry, that's part of my report.
Oh, okay,
So
sorry.
Yeah.
The next
Select
one
board
would,
agenda.
the next one would be,
Well, the question is whether we
number
wanna,
6 on my report.
West Road.
Let's stick with the agenda report since I have that one.
Is there anything else to discuss with Terry while she's here? There's 9 and 10 in new business, but I think in some ways those are probably being addressed by referring to the HR director.
I agree with that.
Well, 9 is 11, say mine's 10 and 11 right now, because I move things around. Is one of them the weekly report? Because that has already been vetted
Yeah,
by.
10 is
That's
regular
already been
report.
vetted by HR, and she is fully in support of it.
Number 10.
The regular reports from the town clerk's office.
Good.
And then the discussion of processes to improve communication, she also, is in support of that. So it's already been discussed with her today, so that we can keep things moving.
Yeah, so we'll get that report and
And I'm giving you the report, she's already signed off on it.
okay, I understand what you're saying to us. Great.
So item 10 on our today's.
The way you
agenda-
said it was like,
Yeah. Item 10 on the today's agenda is regular reports from town clerk's office, which is this item 10 form. Because remember Terry had said in the meeting last week that she used to come and tell the select board.
Yep.
And I thought it would be great to have a written version of that.
Mhm.
So, we came up with this form that Sophia looked at and thinks would work. It should be fairly quick to fill out, it could be done once a week, and we would have a written record of the kinds of things that the clerk is doing and about how long they take her. And that will be a really useful thing when it comes time for the annual reviews.
yes.
So when you used to do your weekly reports, what format were they in?
I would send the selectmen an email, and I'd say my accomplishments for this week and my goals for the next. And I'd just give an overview of everything that I had, because back then there was a lot of back work to do. And like the little grants I wrote for the town clerk's office and how the elections went, like it was, I didn't say like I made 15 copies of death certificates, you know, like, I would just give an overview of what we did for the week, and I'd also add what my assistant did. At the time.
That would be my only concern with this form is there's something to data like this and there's something to free form.
To a narrative.
Yeah, in some ways, but I know that there's comment boxes in here. Like, is Terry gonna count her emails?
No,
To look in her sent box and see how many, like 100 emails, and how is she gonna?
I think they're quantifiable, I mean, I think, each day when you come in, she's here 2 days a week, if she comes in and sees she has 6 voicemails, you put 6. If she has 100 emails when she opens it up that day, you put 100.
So is it inbox emails or sent emails?
Inbox emails. I don't think you need to complicate this, Justin, this is to get a feel for what's going on in that office, so when it comes time for budget time, and as well as to help me be a better supervisor and, keep things out of the HR office, and for you guys to be informed, this, it's not unusual.
and a lot of these, a lot of them are seasonal, like, obviously, you're not doing a street census all year round. You're not doing the annual town meeting minutes all year round, you're not doing, elections right, like, sometimes there's gonna be a bunch of hours, sometimes it's just gonna be empty because it's not relevant this week.
But the census I work on year round, like, yes, the census year round, the filing, like boards and commissions, there's things
Some is every week, I get it.
and sometimes I'm doing a death certificate and somebody comes in for a dog license, so it's like, I never do the same thing 2 days in a row.
Right, but you know that you did, this week, you did 2 dog licenses.
Yeah.
1 DBA.
Yeah.
And 1 death or 0 deaths or 1 marriage or whatever, right? That part, that's easy to quantify, I'm assuming.
Mhm.
The things that are probably harder to quantify is how much time you spent on the street census, I don't know, I'm making something up.
But I think you can estimate, I can't do my job either and say, oh, I spent 6 hours on select work, because some days you guys send me a whole ton of stuff and some days you don't. But I think you can give a fair average of, You know, this week I spent quite a bit of time on filing, you know, because I needed to.
Yeah, no, it's good.
We're not asking for, you know, Terry to be
By the minute.
by the minute, you know, like, I think, you know, this lets us know what's going on in the office, what she may need help with, what projects she's having difficulty with, what projects she's excelling at.
And I would presume, like, as you're fixing the boards and commissions list, it's gonna be a larger number right now than it will be once that's up to date and all you're doing is maintaining,
Yes.
for example.
Mhm.
All right, good.
So that's
So,
approval. And
yeah, do you want?
I'll send her a memo with
I haven't seen it. And see, the thing about it is any census is out of another budget. There's $1,500 that Gary and I work above and beyond town clerk.
Mhm.
But you still want it out here?
Yes, this is just what your office is.
We're
This is
trying to get a
my
sense of
money.
what's happening in there,
Okay.
not what line item it's coming
Okay.
from.
Um,
That's what it's, cause otherwise we'd have to have the election on a different thing also, right, so,
If I think of anything else,
yeah, definitely.
add it to them.
We would love to have those additions. This was, you know, I took this off of a bunch of different town clerk job descriptions, but that doesn't mean it's complete,
Mhm.
I would assume.
So that's number 10. I think Scott's on his way back.
Was there anything else we need clerk feedback on before we let her go back to work?
Well, it's number 9, the issue of
Great.
direct report. Which I understand that Sophia's already considered this, but I think it should be reviewed in conjunction with everything that Sophia is reviewing in terms of a comprehensive, forward-looking plan.
That's fine. Yeah, her only comment was that if it was going to be her and I versus you and I, that she just wanted to run that by council first. She would prefer, I think, that it be you and I. But it doesn't, that I think that she has acknowledged that it does seem that the current system is not working.
Yeah, it has its, I forget, I think today we acknowledged that I forgot to forward something last week. All right, I do think unless there's objection, that the process of communication
I
and
did-
direct reporting, I think should come with a comprehensive plan from Sophia.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna put out there for us to ponder in the intervening weeks, and I did discuss this with Sophia today, so I just wanna keep you guys in the loop that it strikes me that, as Scott alluded to this last week, that to improve communication and take speed things up and make sure fewer things get lost in the cracks, reopening written communication between the town administrator and the clerk's office should be something we strongly consider. And I would put forth that the advantage of written communication is that it's completely documentable and verifiable. If there are problems, it's easy to see what they are and to deal with them. We now have HR. We have a person who can deal with issues as they arise. It doesn't have to take months, it doesn't have to be difficult, it can be dealt with expediently. We are in the process of updating the harassment policy, but we have someone to handle complaints even in the interim. We've already dealt with the sexual harassment policy, and I think within the next 2 weeks, we'll have the harassment policy ironed out. But it would mean that there was expedient direct communication, and if there's a problem, we'll deal with it. It's kind of to everybody's benefit, because if there's misbehavior, we'll see it in a verifiable form. And I think that at this point, the system we have running has become burden on the town, and it's causing a lot of inefficiency and a lot of frustration and repeated issues. And I don't see a way to get, like, you even said this, I don't see a way to get around it. So we can, I'm not saying we decide this tonight, I just wanna put it out there that I think that this would be a way to reduce the amount of slow communication and miscommunication and failed communication, where documents are not being looked at because of their author.
Alright. Is that everything? Tara, do you have any questions or comments?
Well, what are you asking?
Well, we're not making, I don't think we're making a decision
Oh,
tonight, but
no, we're not
the
making-
issue,
okay.
the thing is with you know how past couple months, has it even been a couple months? Past few weeks, maybe months, I don't know, time flies. You know, I've been the direct report in that everything from Melissa to you and vice versa goes through me.
Right.
And then sometimes it works and sometimes, like, I forgot a thing or two,
Mhm.
like the new hire paperwork. And so we're just considering, I think, like me personally, we're considering the accommodation and finding a way to accommodate the accommodation so that we can have thorough and timely communication.
Mhm.
There's another example that I would use, which is that, Terry said that she doesn't get communication regarding appointees. But when we appoint someone, every time they're sent either an email or a letter concerning that appointment, there's a copy of that at the clerk's office. But if the clerk's choosing not to look at communication that comes from the TA's office, then she wouldn't have written documentation because it's being sent to her, but she's not looking at it. Or it needs to be sent to you, so you then forward to her, which seems like kind of unnecessary. Is there really a reason to send an appointment letter to you so you can forward it to the clerk?
And the only reason why is because I was told to not communicate.
I understand that,
So-
but I'm saying we need to alter the policy, I'm
Okay.
suggesting, I'm
So
suggesting.
what we're doing is we're looking at this accommodation, but I think unless there's real opposition, we're gonna refer, and the HR director was the one who came up with the direct report idea in the first place. And we're gonna refer review of it, in conjunction with everything that you're dealing with the HR director with. And then go from there with a comprehensive plan for going forward. But for right now, we're not gonna make any decisions on it.
I was just putting it out there for you guys to think about,
Alright,
cause I can't talk to anybody outside me.
So what do I do? Communicate with Melissa?
just keep going, how we've been going, cause we're not making any decisions tonight.
Because today I did, I had to.
Yeah, well, I forgot to forward the new hire paperwork, I think, and,
Who's the new hire?
Um,
Oh,
people-
yeah, Laurie, okay, never mind.
No, people on my election workers.
Okay.
So Melissa told me how to do it and I thanked her.
yeah,
Great.
and I had
Well
forgotten
done.
to
It's
forward.
okay.
But for right now, more or less, we're just staying the course, and then in a couple weeks, we're going, you know, in the whole, with everything that we're dealing with, we're gonna hopefully have a comprehensive plan so that the communication, and it may stay the same, but it sounds like it's probably gonna change in some way. The
And I don't
accommodation.
mind if it changes.
Okay.
I don't.
I had the impression from a number of past emails that you might object to it, but I'm pleased to hear that you don't.
Because today I needed those
New hire people.
new hire paperwork and I was able to go on the website through Melissa and get it.
Great.
So,
Okay.
Alright, thank you for joining us.
you're welcome. Thanks.
So that takes off 4, 9, and 10.
9 and 10, yep, and there's really nothing new on 5.
Yeah.
So, the issue with Kimama that everyone brought up raised some other issues. And I know that there are some ongoing issues that the building inspector is dealing with, that the fire chief is dealing with. But Scott correctly pointed out, that might not really under our purview. The only thing that would be under our purview would be the noise issue, because the town doesn't have a noise ordinance. Do we wanna get this off our table? Do we wanna draft a letter to them about the concerns? Do we think it's not significant enough? Do we wanna invite the director to a meeting, even if it's remote? What do we think we should do so we can get this off our agenda for week 2?
Yeah, so you understand the issue probably as well as anybody. What Scott's point that if it's a fire inspector issue or a building inspector issue, that just is, it's their office, not ours,
Right.
makes sense.
Mhm.
We should get back to the people who raised the concerns to us. And if the fact of the matter is that there's nothing for us to do, we can tell them. We looked into it and there's nothing for us to do. We could also tell them, the planning board, would a noise ordinance be a zoning?
No.
It would be a select board issue.
Yeah, what,
If it was an ordinance, yeah, the bylaw can be zoning.
So,
no, it
How-
would be
And I
zoning, because
think
it's not about where you live, it would be an overall, I think it would be an ordinance.
I think, didn't Donna explain that we can't have ordinances? Ordinances are for, I feel like this came up in a meeting and someone asked what the difference was between an ordinance and a bylaw. I think
yes,
we were there.
it was
and
at
she
the
said,
bylaw, it was at the joint meeting with the bylaw review committee.
And an ordinance is not applicable here, right?
I'm not gonna,
Because,
I'm good, let me find it, I'll see if I can find it.
I'm not gonna
Alright.
sign off on that, but we had a joint meeting with the bylaw review committee, and they were, to the best of my recollection, confused why sometimes it was ordinance, sometimes it was bylaw.
Yeah.
And I think Melissa's
I'm
right
gonna
that,
find it right now.
to do with size.
Could well be.
city versus
So
town.
they asked, what's the difference between,
Okay. Well, I
This was
think
when
there
she
is
was
something
here.
we can do. We can write the owners of Camp Kimama,
Mama, I think it
Kimama,
is too.
your mama, Camp Your Mama, and, ask them to come in and talk to us. And just state that, we've had some of your close neighbors come in with some concerns about the past season and going forward. Would you like to come in and sit with us and wow. That's what they did at Hume.
Mhm.
They came in and introduced themselves.
Sounds right.
Same thing what happened with Kuchar's sports camp.
Yep.
They came in after we requested they came in. And, they changed around, but they did what they had to do.
Yeah.
And they did it without any,
Fuss.
yeah.
What's the,
It's really, we don't have any leverage. So
Yeah.
when you have no leverage, all you can do is smile and be a good neighbor and lead by example.
so on June 29th, when you guys met with town council, it was asked, what is the difference between an ordinance and a bylaw? And she said that an ordinance is for a city and a bylaw is for a town. Monterey will only be adopting bylaws.
So a noise bylaw would be a bylaw, not a zoning bylaw, because zoning bylaws are about what you're allowed to do in particular districts and it's about what you can build. It's not about how you can
Alright.
behave, because it's not a use. The other issue about whether they can be year round, that's definitely the planning
Yeah.
board, because that's a zoning thing, but noise would be everywhere, because it's not about a particular area.
So I wanna come to a resolution on this Camp Kimama,
Mhm.
concerns. What do we do between this meeting and next meeting or next one?
Do we wanna reach out to them and ask?
Yeah,
them
we
to
can
come?
invite them to
Just
a
state that
future
some
meeting.
members
Yeah.
of your community came in with concerns about noise, camping, the whole rundown.
Do you want a motion?
No, if there's general consensus, I will
Yeah.
invite to a future meeting the owners of Camp Kimama Half Moon, and then we'll go from there.
Sure.
If we're gonna do it,
Yep.
but that will be the next step.
That would be the next one.
Okay.
Alright.
That takes care of 5, we're on to new business.
Alright.
West Road, private road maintenance invoice from the highway department, so this issue is somewhat resolved
It's almost totally
Yay.
resolved.
today,
Yeah.
but I mean, there are a couple remaining questions, which is how do we, so there was, the road was spilling out onto
Yes.
Pixley Road 57, And the highway department did some work, recommended potentially invoicing for work done in July and September. The private landowners since, and there was also complaint that it trashed the road, but the highway departments, from the town's point of view, we were, maintaining our road, which is 57, from this road spilling out onto ours. And since then, the private landowner has actually taken it, or a couple of the owners on that road took it into their own hands and redid the road. So I'm assuming we don't want to send them the invoice from the highway department for the previous work that was done, since the goodwill has been expressed with them fixing the road.
That seems wise.
Do we wanna invoice them for $1,500?
The people that live on the street.
Yeah.
No.
I think the idea being that if you have a private road that keeps spilling out onto a public road, you may invoice them as a way to.
I would invoice Sean Tucker. He's the owner of the property. Give the people that live there responsible for it.
They're all owners of the property, it's a question that
They're not joint
He
tenants
owns
in
it.
common there. He owns the road. They own the property. They have rights of way over the driveway.
I guess so, cause he went ahead and
Because
fixed it.
he went and fixed it.
I will put forward the following, there is an existing bylaw about private ways. However, two things, number one, that was put forth under MGL chapter 40, section 6N, 6E, which got repealed. Also, it was a way for people who lived on a common way to ask the town for help, and that the town could bill them for helping them if they asked. However, under 6N, if we wanted to put on a bylaw to give us some coverage in this instance, 6N would allow for us to craft a bylaw, not a zoning bylaw, but a regular bylaw, so that's on our watch. To craft a bylaw that gives us a whole bunch of options that we can choose to include, that would allow us to say, if a private way is causing harm to a public way or to the land of abutters who aren't members of the private way usage, and the town is in a situation where it has to repair either the public way or modify the private way to prevent further damage, we can actually bill them for that problem. Because the West Road situation is resolved, but Jim tells me there are a bunch of them in the town that are constantly an issue. My goal would be that we could then, if we had such a thing, we could then inform everybody, so that what we want is for them to maintain their roads, and we don't have to do anything, right?
So
Yeah, we shouldn't be spending money keeping our road clear due to negligence of the private owner.
Correct. I agree.
And Dayton, right?
Yeah, right, but
If
we
we
have no
do-
recourse right now.
So let me say something else. I should probably recuse myself from this issue on West Road because my lead employee lives on West Road.
Okay,
So I really need to stop talking about West Road and who should be billed and who shouldn't be.
okay.
You can bill the hell out of them all if you want, so.
So, yes, I think it's good that we are maintaining our roads and private roads are maintained. I would consider adopting, is this accepting a portion of MGL, or is this?
No, we have to craft it because MGL, it's no big deal, we'll go home and look up chapter 46 and it comes right up, but it has like a list, like A through G of things that can be addressed. You don't have to address all of them, and it doesn't tell you what you have to say there.
46.
Chapter 40, section 6N.
Okay, so we'll look into that as far as going forward, but for right now,
That's it, yeah.
I think, unless there's any opposition, we're not going to bill the private owners of West Road because they have taken remedial action to fix the problem. Does that work, Susan?
Absolutely.
Okay. Item 7 is town administrator items, and there are 7 of them.
For my roundtables. I did explain it in item 1, I didn't want to summarize, I can in my report. I did talk again with Sophia, and she told me I should also add that, making them mandatory is also a perfect opportunity for training, the department heads as well, in addition to the things I listed.
So who, and I'm having this discussion with Sophia right now as to who is being reviewed as an employee. Who is a department head? Because it'd be helpful if the accountant is involved in some of these discussions, because I know many, if not all departments work with the accountant in some capacity.
Mhm.
And sometimes how they're interacting with the accountant, things come up. But they're not a department head because they're a contracted service.
That's what I would say, yes, I mean.
Whereas I think there's other people that we would call department heads, like the building inspector, just for example, that there is the occasional thing where he may relate to other departments, but for the most part, it seems like what's going on in the building inspector's office doesn't relate so much to what's going on at the highway department, for instance.
It's pretty independent.
So I guess what I'm getting at is I understand the point of gathering, most of the leaders, but who exactly does that mean? And I think that certain people who may not be department heads, it would be really valuable for them to be there. The other question I have is, if we're gonna make it mandatory, if we have someone on a Wednesday, Thursday schedule and someone on a Tuesday, Friday, how are we gonna find time that we can say, okay, this is mandatory, you have to be there? What if they have another job or something? And
If we had a list of all the people and there was a time that they were all available, that wouldn't be an issue. Do we need to make a list of the people that would be the most relevant instead of just calling it department head? Because there might be people that aren't, like you pointed out, I don't know. Would it make sense to have
So I
Don go there?
disagree with Justin, that I think actually, Jim and Don do have things in common. I mean, there have been several times, not as often as other departments, where they've been in my offices and we have discussed projects going on, Don could have a building project that, is causing damage to the road because of the trucks that are coming through, or, runoff is being caused, by something that they've done with the foundation or something. So there are definitely, I think everybody that's in the room is going to, understand and
Benefit.
and benefit, thank you, it's late.
I get it.
And benefit from what each department says, no, but Don may benefit from something that comes up about employee benefits, or, the Maya programs that we run, or that there's a bunch of things. So I will gladly make you a list of who we envision coming there.
the other, I see the value in getting all the heads together and discussing goals, and I wonder if what I said last meeting was that if you force people to be at a meeting that they have no interest being at, and they really don't have something on the agenda, it's worse than them not even showing up. But then I've been thinking about it, and I was thinking maybe a quarterly meeting that's mandatory, and we haven't had one, but all boards meeting, like a quarterly meeting where, that's mandatory. And then there's also monthly meetings, and maybe that's more meaningful if it's quarterly, and maybe the mandatory would mean a little bit more and people could work their schedules around a little bit more. So if they're really, and because I know there are part-time employees who may work 10, 20 hours on certain days, what happens when we have an outreach worker on a Tuesday, Thursday schedule and the clerk on a Wednesday, Friday? How do we find it? And there's daytime employees, and then there's people who have full-time jobs and come in the evening. What time do we pick that satisfies everybody, if we're gonna make it mandatory?
That is interesting, it's just like select board meetings, your time doesn't fit everybody's schedule, but if you, want to improve communications and you wanna, work for the best of the town, you make arrangements, right?
Maybe we should start with a list of who the people are and see if, are you willing to try to see if, given their schedules on the people on the list, if there is a time that will work? If there is a time that will work, we shouldn't poo-poo it because there isn't. It might not be a bad, I don't think your quarterly idea is a bad one, to make, even if they're monthly, to only make quarterly ones mandatory. And for one, and I don't think it's a bad idea to have it be some of them mandatory, because sometimes people are just like, ugh, I just don't wanna go to another meeting, and they might find that it's more useful than they thought it would be, and there's a commitment to keep the meeting short,
Yeah, like with the, for instance.
not like our meetings.
I didn't say it.
I'm right there.
So, for instance, like the email migration, we could be like, we have a meeting, email migration. Anyway, that's that, we're gonna come up with a list, that's that for that agenda item. The next one's Schoolhouse insurance renewal from Cabot Risk Strategies.
Yes, I believe I have some stuff to fill in on that, but if you approve it, I will fill it all out and have Justin come in and sign, or leave it for you to sign.
That building is in a state, and I think we do need to talk about that building at some point, but it's not tonight.
Agenda?
Yes, but can we put it, all I was saying is, can we put it on a future agenda, please?
Please, yes.
That was what I was asking. I was
So-
asking for that.
Is there, I would move that,
Fungus, wet rot, dry rot, bacteria,
I know,
yeah.
all of the things.
move that we renew the insurance for the schoolhouse.
What's it costing us?
And that you don't want to include the terrorism coverage.
Is this the best, I mean, is it being insured as a schoolhouse? Or is it-
Being insured as a vacant building, and this is the only.
Okay, alright, so I was gonna say, it's certain that there is,
$2,047 a year without the terrorism, $2,147 if you get the terrorism. If we do not
well,
get
you
it.
know, we won't get it.
The
We gotta
state of
move
that
it.
building.
Alright, I'm
is-
gonna amend my motion to,
Okay.
renewing the insurance for the schoolhouse without the terrorism
Second.
coverage.
So, yeah,
Second, is there any further discussion or comment? There being none, we'll call a vote. Susan?
yes.
Yes, yes.
Justin, yes, motion carries. You will sign.
I'll leave it in the box for you to sign.
The next item is C, Public Streetlights National Grid Conversion Program.
It seemed like it was a good idea.
So there,
Because I looked at the chart that you sent, and I could not figure out what it was supposed to be
I know,
timing.
it was very confusing, but let's see if I can get what she said right. So this is our current, like, this is what we're paying in the orange, and it's these right here, so there are 12 that are currently,
52,507 annual bill.
right, one of them has the lumen or something here.
Annual luminaire charge, that's the cost.
So the total cost is
So the
12
total-
at 1.6 and 10 at.
So that's what we're
$3,800.
paying in bills right now for these 22 lights. So if we converted to the 3K 15 watt, this is the numbers, the savings.
So we save 1,378. Is there any upfront cost?
No, so
Okay.
it's a free conversion program, and as a matter of fact, if you do it, they're gonna give us a $1,300 credit on our bill once they're all installed.
And they're gonna look a little bit less
Right.
yellow.
Yes, so she said right now, these are like cones,
Yeah.
right? They're gonna be flat. And it's gonna be a brighter, it's gonna look brighter because it's a white light versus the yellow light out there.
It's a
And which-
more restricted
But it is,
flood pattern.
right, it is dark sky friendly.
Yeah.
So which select board member is gonna receive all the complaints from the public on this one?
So they're gonna
yeah,
do, so Jim and I have proposed with her that they do it in stages, so maybe it won't be like, oh my God, we got, like, they have a weekend crew that can come through and maybe bang out three the next weekend, so like, you may drive through and you may just go,
Save us money, more efficient, I would move that we convert the streetlights to the
Second.
National Grid Conversion Program. Seconded motion, is there any discussion or comment further? There being none, call vote. Susan?
Yeah.
Scott?
No, I mean, I agree.
Your vote is
No,
yes.
yes, I'm voting yes.
You're voting
I
yes.
thought you said, is there any other conversation?
And Justin will vote yes, and the motion carries, so we'll convert those over. Good. D, part-time employees putting in for more than the weekly approved hours. I'm gonna recuse myself on this one because it directly
So we
relates to-
actually, the problem with your mother, it's only a couple of departments that have had that, but your mother, I spoke with Lori and her yesterday, and it's all been worked out for the community
Okay.
center.
Then I don't have a conflict of interest.
Right, community center was is approved for 10 hours a week, and they had put her office hours as 10 hours. It was agreed that she's gonna post office hours for 5.5, and the remaining 4.5 will be discretionary, allowing her to do her accounting and her emails when she sees fit, and if happens to be a weekend event, and she's gonna be very cognizant of not going over the 10.
But, all these departments understand that their budget is for the year and that there's no overing. You don't just go over because it's only January.
Well, that's why I'm bringing this to your attention, so I'm bringing it to your attention because it was originally the community center, the town clerk's office is also the other one, so for instance, the assistant with just with the assistant clerk duties, not, census or anything else, should be 14 hours a week, cause it's approved for 7
A pay period.
7 a week, right, 14 a pay period. And the last one was 16.5, and if he comes in on Friday, I believe it's gonna be over again for this pay period.
So doesn't that still just come out of her budget, and when the budget's empty, she's, pooched
That's
for money?
how it should be, but if,
So my
so I'm
budget is,
I'm just asking the board how you guys want me to handle it, so for instance,
I would suggest we redraft the letter as we did before to all the departments that have line items that they have to stay within their budget. That there's no, at the end of the year, oh, we need 20 grand because you frivolously had other people come in and work. I
Well,
mean,
so, and the
not
question
necessarily
being,
frivolously, but.
so the question being, what has been happening at the end of the year? Are there large reserve fund transfer requests? Is this related to the new time clock at all, or these people aren't using the time clock?
well, Gary's not using the time clock, Terry submits those hours, but I'm getting him on next. I'm looking for an answer, so when payroll is submitted on a Monday, if a department is approved for, let's say, 7 hours a week, and it comes in at 10, am I supposed to approve the timesheet and we deal with it later, or am I supposed to say, you're only being approved for 7 right now because you didn't get pre-approval to work extra hours?
Question, is the money based on somebody doing hours, or is it based upon, I mean, does it matter to us if they put in 13 this week and 8 the next?
I guess
And they were only
it's-
supposed to have 10? I mean, at the end of the year, when their money runs dry, who are they gonna have to do their staffing?
Okay.
So, I mean, I think that they need to be told, if you've got a budget for 7 hours, that's it. No more of these 12. I mean, where is that gonna come from? It comes from it now, because there's still money in the fund.
Right.
But when that fund starts drying up, and it's still got a month to go,
So basically, you're suggesting a memo to all, I guess, would it be department heads?
anybody who puts in.
Reminding them that budgets are annual and that they themselves are responsible for monitoring how they're spending their budgeted money
And where they are.
and where they are in their budget for the year, with an eye to not allowing their budget to run out prematurely and ending up without money to pay their staff. Would
Yeah.
that sum it up?
Well, I'd be interested to see what years prior are there departments that come
That are
thousands
over.
of dollars short. And if there aren't, for the most part, the departments, have largely stayed the same. They're probably aware that if they do 12, then they gotta do 8 the next week and make up for it, and have some flexibility, as long as they have the whole picture in mind of the whole year.
Yes, so I guess maybe let me explain it a little more. So once everybody's on the time clock system, so like, I'm just gonna take the town clerks for example, because it happened with Gary. So when both Terry and Gary are on the time clock system, once they fill out the time clock for the pay period, it comes to me and I approve it. So I wanna know, am I supposed to approve it when they went to the budget meetings and said, Gary can only work, we're putting in for 7 hours a week. If he's putting in for 8, 9, 10, do I approve it? And just remind the department head, you were approved for 7 hours a week, so make sure, at the end of the year, you realize you're not gonna have him for the last couple of weeks.
Or
Or-
you'll be,
Because I don't wanna get in trouble for when someone says, well, but Melissa, you approved the timesheets when they were over, why didn't you say something then? So
Well, that's
I'm
right.
covering my.
I would say it now in that letter.
Okay, so I'll be
We
glad to
used to
send out a
send those out
memo
all the
saying.
time. I mean, all the time we sent those out to remind
I'm just-
companies to
I'm
do it.
being careful, I don't
Oh,
want to
I
be
think
accused
I
of
think you're
anything.
absolutely right. I agree that we should send out a letter. telling people,
I
look,
mean,
your budget is
yeah.
your budget. You requested it, you live with it.
The advantage of doing it that way is it allows them to decide when they wanna
Flexibility,
use
yes.
more, and it gives them flexibility.
Sure.
But it lets them know, we did notice, we want you to just keep this in mind, at the end of the year, that your budget's your budget.
I mean, I remember having spreadsheets
like
on
that?
all
Yeah.
these departments.
Yeah.
Where we knew exactly.
But they get
Didn't Barbara
those.
used to come in all the time with those?
Yeah, the departments get those every month, and so I will send them,
Yeah,
I
but
just,
those,
again, I
the
was
we get.
covering my CYA, I was covering my took as.
No, awesome, good pickup. But what I'm saying is, we used to get them on the select board years ago, where we knew all where people were and we could, I can't remember who used to
Monthly
give them those
expense
sheets.
reports. Monthly,
So
like
I'm
a
waiting
month,
for
like
my,
a
can't
month,
wait for my
we're
expense.
talking like a monthly
Yeah.
expense report.
Basically like a, you know, a ROSA working operating.
Checking in, this is where you are at, for the year.
Okay, so we're good.
Okay,
Okay,
We're good on that.
there's consensus. Okay, the next one is Pat Norris, who is doing a good job at the swap shop. And this is a request to make a formal motion. And I will move that Pat Norris work at the swap shop under the senior tax work-off abatement program beginning the 1st of October this year.
Second.
Is there any further discussion or comment?
Only that I would like, can someone give me is the senior tax work-off abatement program exactly what it sounds like?
Yes.
Is there anything I should know about it that I might not know based on its name?
So, workers can make up to $1,500 per fiscal year. They have to be over the age of 60, they have to own a property for at least 1 year in Monterey, only one abatement per resident.
And does this still need to go through like the assessor's office?
So it will, yeah, so I'll let her know, she'll track her hours, and it's done on a fiscal year, I believe, yes, July 1 through June 30th, so, and it's up to a maximum of $1,500, so.
Melissa, when was that enacted? I seem to recall that.
Yeah, I wanna say like,
15?
that sounds good. This form says 18, so it was probably in that vicinity, this could be an updated one though.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, there's a second motion. Is there any further discussion or comment? There being none, we'll call a vote. Susan?
Yes?
Scott?
Yes.
Justin, yes, motion carries. Thank you, Pat, for your work at the swap shop.
Already down to 6?
Green Communities update.
Yes, so essentially, I've been trying to get in touch with BRPC to get this, the next step that needed to be done after we had all the, energy audits, and despite being, BRPC being told several times the fire company building was not a town-owned building, they included it in their, factoring of whether we were eligible to receive credits. So now that they have actually heard me, it's been determined that we actually are not eligible to be a green community because we don't meet the, there's not enough eligible energy efficiency work to spend down the designation grant. She said there might be other funding sources to make energy efficiency improvements, but the woman from BRPC is working with DOER, which is but I just wanted to let you know, because I know there are a few interested parties in Monterey who talk about the Green Communities Grant quite a bit, and can we use the funds, but it does not look like.
Basically, there's just not enough buildings that could get upgrades that would,
Correct, we have to have a 20% reduction, and the 3 surveys that we've had here, they have not determined that the work that could be done would save us 20%.
They can't just give us a better furnace and pump a bunch of insulation in the walls?
So of the 3 people we've had here, I believe 1 said yes, we need a new furnace, and 2 said no, we don't need a new furnace.
But, and
What if we turn the lights out before 9?
I'll gladly give you, I have one of the reports, one of the companies never gave us one.
okay, so for right now, we have nothing to do there. but-
Nothing to do, I just wanted you to know. so-
Yeah, please just let
Thank you.
Peter know, Peter Marquette,
Yes.
and then he'll update his group on that. G, use of meeting room, front room meeting room, this meeting room.
Yes, so just recently, there's been a lot of activity in here, which is good. However, this is a shared computer amongst a couple people, and, there have been some meetings in here that people didn't let me know about. So I would like to, if it's okay with you, I found a shared calendar. I would like to send it out to everybody, and that they need to, I'm gonna create two of them, one for the computer and one for the office room, and you're gonna need to sign up. So if you happen to come in here and need to use a computer and it's already signed up to my office assistant, then I'm sorry, you're gonna have to reschedule to another day. I just don't, it's uncomfortable when some people were coming in here like, oh, I thought I could,
Yeah, it'd be good to have a plan.
Yeah.
My only question would be, as we add more people to the rotation, would it make any sense to look into a second, not cubicle, but desk and computer in this room? Cause right now we have two setups that, when we have a select board meeting, that this room's completely taken up, or any other kind of meeting, like Board of Health, Council on Aging. And then for the only other computer, you have Council on Aging, outreach worker, Concom agent, office assistant possibly.
the treasurer. So the office assistant's been using this one, I have her set up
Okay.
only on this one. Concom can use either one,
Which, either one, either
the
the,
one behind me.
Behind me or
office
this one?
Or this
Okay.
one. The treasurer needs the one in there every other Monday. Gary has been using this one, I'm not sure why not in the town clerk's office.
doesn't the town clerk's office have two computers in it?
One's a state computer that's only
Okay.
for state things.
Oh, okay, got it.
That's another discussion. There's a lot of people, and then you're gonna have your select board secretary in here, which brings me to the other item that I emailed you about this morning, is it's not on here because he's ordering another computer, because this one is actually set up so that I can access all my files, but if you're gonna have a select board secretary working on it, either I need a new computer that's set up for me, a laptop that I can bring in here to be able to do, when we're working on budgets, I need to be able to money on the forms, or buy a laptop for the select board secretary and have her sit
What's the budget for additional computers?
4,000.
How much have we used so far?
I don't have that off the top of my head, but I'd probably say maybe 1,000.
What do you foresee another station costing?
Probably about 1,000.
Let's look into that, all things considered.
Desk as well.
A station.
But there's,
Yeah.
they come from different lines, cause we have
Okay,
IT or computers 4,000, and a desk would come from probably like select board expenses or something, right?
Could be. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I can research some desk options, and we can certainly put another desk and another computer in the shared office too, because like, when the treasurer's in there, he doesn't need to be in there by himself, there's nothing.
Well, let's look into that, because now we have a lot more people than we did a year ago trying to work on a few shared computers.
Yep.
And if it's just the price of that's a price, but we're not building a new office space, we're just adding a desk and a computer.
So do you have, I don't know when your select board secretary is starting, if she hasn't responded to me.
No, so last thing was you had reached out to her, and then you had reached out to her, so I hadn't reached out to her, and then you reached out to me that she hadn't responded. So I emailed her
did you respond?
immediately, and to the second email. And then I said, please reach out to Melissa for new hire paperwork and Terry for getting sworn in. So I'll double check. I don't have a phone number. I forget if we ever got a phone number, but I can't seem to find one. I have an email.
So does she know our next meeting is the noon meeting on the 6th?
I'll run that by her, and hopefully we could,
So if she is here, how do you envision her taking minutes if I need this computer?
so.
What's it take to get a computer here?
I just want you guys to sign off on it, I don't
Well, I
want
mean,
$1,000,
Well, let's just say that, okay,
it might take more than a week.
to get it.
Yeah.
It's not like you walk into Staples or
No,
go
I
to
have
Best
the-
Buy and get what you need and come back.
No, I have IT buy something that fits what we need.
And IT doesn't just have it like, warehouse somewhere, garage. Really? What's with this IT guy? Is that funny?
It is.
Why?
I don't even think IT firms around here have
No,
computers
typically
sitting around.
IT
You gotta
firms
like
don't.
order them
Yeah,
from
you
like
gotta
Dell
order.
and HP and.
They might order them for you,
Right.
but they don't walk in with them from your own
Okay.
source.
So, where does that leave us, going forward?
So we're good on the scheduling of the room, and now we have to make a decision about what to do about a computer.
I'd say, let's just say, let's get it.
I'm on board with that. Do we wanna, I mean, waiting for a proposal is only gonna make it take
A
longer.
proposal for,
What computer, I mean, I
well,
think we
it's
should
not
just approve it.
subject to procurement,
Right, so I think we should just
and we'll
approve.
just follow best practice.
Yeah.
Compare,
So is it going to be for me or for, I mean, I had this one set up for the select board.
Well, I think-
secretary.
and-
What's the best?
Yep.
Come on,
You want to
feed
just
us.
leave it up to me and
so
I'll,
this is the.
Well, what do you think is best? A laptop or a full thing?
the laptop, if it's for me.
Okay, I also like laptop, cause I like laptop,
Yeah, you can run with them.
yeah.
So what happens to that one then? How
It'll
does,
stay right here.
but yeah, I know it stays there, but how do you eliminate access to certain files and data that you said this is set up for you?
IT will, well, it's, there's multiple user things on here, mine's password protected.
Okay, so next week, our new secretary sits down there.
She'll never know.
You'll probably be here for that meeting also, I would imagine. Getting her through the ropes, et cetera. You're not concerned about any data or anything like that she's seeing, touching, destroying?
She won't be able to get into my file,
Okay, fine.
but I think you guys are gonna be showing her the ropes, not me. She's your employee. The reason she was hired was to keep me separate from,
From what?
From
me.
Oh, we gotta keep you separate from someone else?
No, not for that reason, because you guys want your minutes to be your minutes, and no influence of me.
Well, I think your influence is important that she gets set up correctly. I mean, you've been doing this for how many years?
I was led to believe that this employee
Okay.
should deal only with the select board.
Was that our intent?
Well, she's going to Melissa for new hire paperwork.
Well, everybody gets them to do higher paperwork.
But I would have, I
think
would
it's
have
starting to-
presumed that once she wrote the
Yeah, I
minutes,
don't wanna
she's
rub, I
gonna,
want some.
yeah, that
Yeah,
she's
'cause
gonna
you're
need
the
to
supervisor
consult
of this
with
person
Melissa about
too.
how to post them
How
and
does,
like,
how does that get
get
around?
shown how to use all of the
To the man next to
software.
What's that?
How did she become, free and clear of Melissa's doctrine?
Who does the planning board clerk report to?
I don't know,
Planning board.
but isn't,
you.
Select board secretary
but
reports
isn't
to.
Sure.
everybody that's appointed under the TA's supervision?
Not the HR director.
No, other than the HR director.
I'm a little slap happy tonight.
I know, right?
Right,
We've
but
been here
other
too
than
many
that
hours.
person-
What's that?
Isn't everybody else, other than the HR director, supposed to be?
Select board secretary.
Select
If we
board
want-
secretary and the HR director and me are the only ones that report directly to the select board.
Okay, so I think we are a little beyond the scope of our agenda item, which was use of the front meeting room.
Great.
But the general consensus is that
Order a laptop.
order a laptop, and contingent upon available funds in select board, no, actually in computer and IT, right?
Yes.
Which it sounds like, so contingent upon that, we'll get another setup.
I'll sell you this
Second, do we have
So
a second or we're
that's-
just
I
going?
just wanted
That's
to-
general consensus.
Okay, go.
The next item is keys to the main office for select board. So I had asked Melissa, because occasionally Melissa's not in the office, and someone comes and says, there's a smell coming from the office, or, you know, someone put their mail in the outgoing mail, but it's certified mail and it needs to be sent. And so what happens is when this happens, I call the police, and the police let me in, and we do what we need to do. The question is, if the select board members, or the chair, they have a key to the office, so we don't need to call the police to get in the office. That's the question. You can see the email from Gareth. Gareth said that Melissa's office contains many confidential and irreplaceable documents that she is responsible for. And then he went on to say that the topic has come up many times over the years, and select boards have always been supportive of this, which is not any members of the select board having a key. So Scott may have been involved in some of that.
Yep.
And I said, maybe the town should focus on selecting better select board members if those in charge can't even be trusted with keys to the office. So,
Well, that's absolutely true. Just look what you just went through.
So the question being, because I'd asked Musson, who referred me to Gareth, does the select board desire or feel comfortable with the chair or the members having a key to the main office? Or not?
I say no.
How many times has this arisen? Give me a time, like, you can say the last month, the last year, whatever, but you tell me. Cause I haven't been called, so.
Yeah, no, in particular, I mean, sometimes it's because I was just in town hall, I remember, you know, maybe it's a Thursday night and the building inspector put a piece of certified mail in the outgoing mail, and then realized the town administrator is not gonna be in the office next day, and he says, can you please retrieve that? Cause I need to send it out. Or there was one time that Melissa could probably remember when there was this thing about smells, and I forget where it was even coming from eventually.
So it was the bathroom,
It was the bathroom.
but that, again, I would just say with smells, if you smell something funny, like that, what that email said anyway, the fire department should have been called. Not you going and, well, I know you're on the fire department.
So anyways, the question is, and of course, any file cabinets that have confidential personnel files are still locked, right?
Those are out here.
Yeah. So that's my situation. How many times in a year? I don't know,
Or-
5 or 10. Like, and then it's monthly expense reports or whatnot, or
So I
the
can put
warrants and
those out
whatnot.
here.
I mean,
That's in
yeah,
a binder. I feel more comfortable with the less keys to my office, the better. Right now, it's just the police department and myself, so. As there have been some very negative, you know, and I guess I would ask, does that mean you want keys to everybody's office? Like, why just my office? What if the smell was coming from the building inspector's office and he wasn't there? You still would have had to call the police to get in that office, or the tax collectors, or the assessors.
yeah, I guess usually it's
Or the
just
clerks.
it's been little, I forget what even was the most recent time. Well, that was actually to get in the box outside to collect the election ballots. But we just called the police. I mean, that's what happens. I've ended up calling the police. I've been told that phone leads directly to the police. It leads you to Berkshire, to dispatch. So then I call, however, I call a cell or something, and it usually is reasonably, you know, they're not on a call and they make their way over depending on who it is. That's, we don't need to discuss it for a long time.
So Scott said no.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna have to go with no in light of what's happened recently. I agree with you that the town needs to elect better select board members, but unfortunately, it being democratic, we're not really in control of that. And I think this just gives us a little bit of safety to make sure that in the current environment, there can be no accusations of malfeasance. I don't believe that you would be guilty of them, but I don't wanna see the town, I don't even want the option for someone to say that.
Okay, that's that. We dealt with the next few items. Where's my other
I
agenda?
kind of think we're.
So we're on
Review
to
mail.
11, we're on to
We did GZA already, so we'd be on to 12.
12. So we got a request from the community center, for Laura Shaw as the chair of the community center committee in particular, an ARPA request, which is 12A, and we're just acknowledging that we received it. It's for $85,000 to build a pavilion. We do have that deadline of October 13th. Briefly, after that deadline, how do we wanna proceed? Do we wanna hold a public meeting and get input on the ARPA stuff? I mean, I guess we can make that decision at the time, but do think about, we
How we
asked,
wanna handle it once the deadline comes up,
we asked for proposals
by 15th, right?
by the Thursday, October 13th.
13th, okay.
And just be aware that we're talking about designating some or all of the money after that deadline. 12B is thank you to the Friends of the Library. It's printed out here, 12B. Thank you. This is about the $25,000 donation. Thank you for your generous donation toward the Monterey Library Building Project loan. On behalf of the town, the select board appreciates the contribution that you have made to lessen the burden on the Monterey taxpayer for years to come. Furthermore, we are grateful for your continued support of the new Monterey Library building through every phase of the project. I would move that we approve this letter.
Yeah, second,
Is there any discussion or comment on it? Call vote.
Yes.
Susan,
yes.
Scott, yes, and Justin, yes, motion carries. So we'll get a clean copy of that to sign. 12C memo to the planning board, read the zoning bylaw error. So you reached out to the planning board?
I did reach out to the planning
Okay.
board, explained the situation, and, we've had several back and forths. The one issue I'll raise, and I raise it because it was a concern to me. We've been reaching out to various people in the past. By the way, if you look at any of the AG approvals, and you can get them online in a PDF, you'll see at the bottom that it actually says right there in wording that there has to be posting. And that posting is apparently after the passage, not before. So that's why you can read the language for yourself. So Tom reached out to Maggie Leonard, who was the former chair of the planning board during the 2012 revision. And apparently her reply was that the planning board felt that it would be a good thing for the town to have more camps and encourage them, and so they just changed it. But that's not legal, right? So the town legally passed a zoning bylaw that made it by permit, and the planning board just apparently, according to this, might have just changed that because they felt that was a good thing, but that's not legal.
That's correct.
So
that's what's
I
supposed-
hope that there was a misunderstanding and that that's not actually what happened, because that doesn't reflect very well on someone who had a very good, long tenure on the planning board. But that was the communication I received, and that concerned me. I did respond to Tom that the bylaw as passed is by special permit. And so it's not really an option for the planning board to propose something different at this point, but the written document does not jive with the bylaw as passed, and that continues to be a problem. So supposedly, they are continuing to,
And that can only be done on an annual.
it could be done in special, but there's no way we could do it in time because you'd have to go through all the posting and public hearing requirements.
And it's the planning board's responsibility.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's one thing off our plate.
Yeah, but it's something that would be nice if it was on our plate, just to get motivated on it.
It'd be nice if it could just be done clerically,
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
sometimes life does not agree with you.
Well, is there any way to go back through microfilm on the Berkshire Eagle, Berkshire Record, Shopper's Guide, anywhere that we post things, to see if Monterey had put in any
To
type
my
of?
knowledge, we've never done that, and no one can remember ever doing so. Normally what would have happened would
Yeah,
they
what a
would have
bylaw.
updated the zoning rule, and that's what would have been going out, and we would have had a copy of that, but that doesn't seem to have happened in this instance. So I don't think we have any recourse, we're continuing to look, but
Okay. Melissa, is the only time that we print the bylaws is when there's been a change? I mean, we don't print them every 5 years, it's just to get older copies away and new copies in that are just less beat up.
And we don't actually print them anymore, we just put them online, you can print them yourself or
not.
we don't have those books anymore, I think
Mhm.
2006 was the last time that those were done. Hey, I still use my copy.
I do too.
Okay.
Oh.
That's settled that.
Yep.
There is a thing in your packet, this MH.
The minors and Harrington, yeah.
Yeah, you got the letter
I read
that
it.
Donna sent to Jeremiah, that's really 1C, but we'll just come back to that.
Yep.
We're waiting
I read it
as far as
earlier,
I know.
so.
I think it was good.
Approved minutes, can we tackle 9/7 and 9/13 joint?
Please, because I don't wanna get too old.
Okay, so we'll just do 9/7 and 9/13 joint,
Okay.
if that's a reasonable, so 9/7. I'm red, Susan blue. all good to me.
Sorry, I'm only on page 2.
Let me know if anyone has any concerns other than how it's drafted and edited here. Otherwise, we will approve them.
Steve ever come back to us with his Arts Commission? I think the next.
He was here tonight.
Yeah,
We had
but
to kick him off.
that was today, wasn't it?
VA doesn't know, we sent
Yeah, he
something,
just
but
sent us that said that he didn't look like, so that was 1-2 grand left.
Yeah, but they, at last I knew they didn't have any quotes or estimates, right?
No, so I am working on trying to get some of that,
I think
but that's
it's,
proving to be very difficult.
I think it's right for ARPA personally. Any, no,
Sorry, I'm on page 3. And those are just documents. Yep, I'm
Oh,
good
the
with
one
the,
thing, page
what?
4. You couldn't
one is
be
this?
legally upheld, this is 9-7, couldn't be legally upheld the special election in concert, get rid of the saving.
Right.
And then this would have saved the town.
Yep.
That's the only change.
Did you catch that? Melissa? Oh, you got
I'll
it,
give her my
okay.
copy.
Alright. Sorry, sometimes she does it right as you say it, so.
That's the only change, other than how they're listed. I would move that we approve the 9-7-22 minutes as edited.
Second,
Any discussion? None, Susan,
yes,
Scott,
Yes.
Justin, yes, do a little thing.
do dance. Alright,
We
nine,
just initial there.
the 913 joints,
9-13 joints.
oh, this needs to be deleted, otherwise it's a meeting twice, you got that too, okay.
We're still working on those.
Oh, what?
Oh,
this. Oh, what are we working on? I got, no, I didn't mean to interrupt. Oh, that's that. And then,
Just a policy of making a motion on an article or on a item, thought, that's not part of the agenda.
We could, I mean, we can entertain things that aren't on the agenda, if they're unforeseen to the chair when posting a meeting. But we also kind of have developed a practice of, if reasonable, putting things off to the next meeting. That way, you know, we're all prepared and done our homework. We can also add, something how to do. You know, some boards do unforeseen business, which just adds, or something else like that. Our agendas are very specific. You look at other towns, they have town administrator report, select board items, and maybe if they have a real formal thing, they put on the agenda.
I've seen the difference.
Yeah.
Not as, I don't mean to be criticized.
Yeah.
It looks like a lot of things have transpired through fear and moving. To come back in and see the changes in the way that it's being executed makes me wonder about what took place over the last 6 or 7 years and how things have changed. And it's like coming back into your home and realizing that
Well,
this
first you got
isn't my
moved
home.
Good. Yeah, that was.
So I'll put my concerns on a future agenda so that we can all discuss it at that
Yeah,
time.
just do
Because
that.
I'm sure the public is gonna love me.
Well, typically Melissa or I do a draft agenda.
Yeah, either come in and see me or email me what it
Yeah.
is.
We had a real formal policy about like Mondays at 9 AM. Just depending what it is, just email Melissa or me or both.
Okay.
And
I
then,
still threaten
um,
that. Mondays at 9. It's really just to get Justin in here.
That's only changed. Motion to approve 9:13 joint with that one little change and the other amendment.
Second.
Any discussion or comments, there being none, call a vote on the 9:13 joint minutes?
Yes.
Yes,
Aye.
motion carries, alright. Little thing there,
You gave me that
little thing here, that's all we're gonna do,
one. You
If
sign
that
up.
works
Can I
for
ask one
everyone.
question?
yes,
The candidates for the police chief,
yes.
Sophia has decided that for the internal candidate, the chief shouldn't be there for the interviews, it should be her and me and maybe one of you guys. So I just wanted to decide, like,
The chief shouldn't be there. Is that what you, okay.
obvious reasons.
Right, right.
That
No.
he shouldn't, the chief,
You said chief and we heard sheep.
sorry.
That was why it was. Yeah, I know.
So she suggested one of the select board members doing the interview with us.
Have you done any interviews yet?
No, we have 2 scheduled for the 19th.
Would there be, I know we already agreed upon the process, would there be opposition to a select board member at each? I wanna make it equal, you know,
Well, but the chief won't be at one of them.
So
I
I
don't
don't see what.
I mean, I
So
guess
we're
maybe
doing it
she-
because there are some questions about like, what would you change currently in the department? We don't want that person to feel uncomfortable with,
Making their
you know,
disclosure.
and they may not answer honestly if the current chief is sitting there and they feel like they're being criticized.
Hey, the guy's leaving, you know?
Yes, but he also didn't think he should sit in there.
No, that's good. I mean, he understands it.
But she sit on it, I mean,
I mean, Sophia and I can do it by ourselves if we want, but we didn't,
I'll join
maybe
you.
you wanna join for that one? Okay, I'll send you the date.
Daytime.
It is.
Yeah.
alright,
Daytime.
are there any comments, we're gonna
I
do
get
the
a
rest,
raise to work.
we're gonna do the rest of the minutes another day.
Okay.
Any
How-
comments or questions from the public? No, we can't.
How long do we, or how behind, like, I know how many behind we are, but how's our timing on approving minutes? Are we fast?
We're in the clear by
Okay.
2 weeks at least.
Alright,
It's
excellent.
30 days or 3 meetings, it's
Right,
always
right.
30 days for us, we're totally
This is
clear.
last week, so.
Yeah,
This is
if
all-
we're
do I have
ever-
to sign this too?
If we ever, I'll pay attention if we ever run up, but we're good. Motion to adjourn,
Here.
Move,
seconded, call a vote on the motion
Yes.
to adjourn,
yes.
yes, 3 yeses, motion carries, 8:33 PM. Shorter one next week.
Now, aren't,